that's okay with you, we'll get a picture afterwards.
If it's just me and Randall, I'm fine.
Okay, good deal.
I'd like to call the Senate to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Barnett, Senator Barrett, Senator Berry, Senator Blackman, Senator Blackwell, Senator Blunt, Senator Boyd, Senator Brumfield, Senator Bryan, Senator Butler, Senator Carter, Senator Chazanall, Senator Chisholm, Senator DeBar, Senator Delano, Senator England, Senator Fillingane, Senator Frazier, Senator Harkin, Senator Hickman, Senator Hill, Senator Hobson, Senator Horn, Senator Jackson, Senator Johnson, Senator Jordan, Senator Kirby, Senator Latner, Senator McCon, Senator McClendon, Senator McMahon, Senator Michelle, Senator Norwood, Senator Parker, Senator Parks, Senator Pope, Senator Rhodes, Senator Robinson, Senator Seymour, Senator Simmons of the 12th, Senator Simmons of the 13th, Senator Sparks, Senator Suber, Senator Tate, Senator Thomas, Senator Thompson, Senator Turner Ford, Senator Whaley, Senator Wiggins, Senator Williams, Senator Younger. Mr. President, a quorum is present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Will the senators and guests in the gallery please rise for the invocation to be given by Dr. Randall Cofield, who is the pastor of Pine Lake Baptist Church in Van Cleve, Mississippi, and the guest of Senator England. After the invocation will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Senator England. Dr. Cofield.
Let us go to the Lord in prayer. Our Father in heaven, your name is preserved in holiness, and how excellent is your name in all the earth. And I pray again this day that your kingdom will come and your will be done on earth until your glory and your righteous reign fills the earth as the waters fill and cover the sea. I come to you in the exalted name of Jesus Christ, your Son and my Savior and Lord. And I come acknowledging that we are granted this entrance into your holy presence alone by the cross work and resurrection of him who sits at your right hand. Father, I pray for this Senate body, those whom you have placed in positions of authority to govern our state and delegate our Commonwealth's resources. Your word reminds us that there is no authority except that which you have established. Therefore, we acknowledge your sovereignty over our leaders and our government, and we pray your mercy and blessing and guidance for each member of this august body. Father, I humbly pray that you will adorn our legislatures with wisdom and discernment as they make decisions that affect the lives of millions. You tell us in your word that it is you who gives wisdom, and it is from your mouth that comes knowledge and understanding. And so I pray this morning that our leaders will seek your guidance and rely on your infinite wisdom rather than their own understanding. Father, we ask that you help them to allocate our resources wisely, ensuring that the needs of our people are met and that justice and righteousness prevail. May they be inspired by the example of Solomon, who asked and received wisdom from you to govern his people rightly. Let their decisions reflect righteousness, integrity, compassion, and a commitment to the common good. I pray for unity among our lawmakers. In a time of contention, division, and strife, I ask that you unify them with the shared purpose of serving this state of Mississippi by upholding the principles of truth, righteousness, and justice, all to the end that we may lead peaceable and quiet and godly lives, dignified in every way. As it is written in your word, how good and how pleasant it is for God's people to dwell together in unity. Father, we trust in you, for you sovereignly work in all things according to your wise and gracious will. We know that you can work through our leaders to bring about your will for our state. So we place our hope and our confidence in you, knowing that even the king's heart is like a stream of water in your hand, and you turn it wherever you will. And I pray these things in the name of him who is altogether lovely, in the name of Jesus Christ, before whom every knee will bow and every tongue confess that he is Lord. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Cofield. Long travel this morning to be with us from Van Cleve, Mississippi. We appreciate you being here. Thank you, Senator England. Reading of the journal, Senator Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we dispense with the reading of the journal.
Senator moves dispense with the reading of the journal. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Message and petitions, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, there are none.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Committee reports, Senator Blackwell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we dispense with the reading of the committee reports.
Senator moves dispense with the reading of the committee reports. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next, the reading of the titles of bills and resolutions. I recognize Senator Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we dispense with the reading of the titles of the bills and resolutions.
Senator moves dispense with the reading of the titles of bills and resolutions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Introduction of guests. Senator Hobson, you're recognized for introduction, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure to introduce our doctors of the day. We have two doctors, father and son team. Dr. Ron Cannon, who is in the Flowood and Forest areas. He's an ENT. And then his son, Rob Cannon, who lives in Vicksburg, who's a family medicine physician at Mission Primary Care Clinic in Vicksburg. So please welcome our doctors of the day today.
Welcome. Any other introductions? Any other introductions? Seeing none, we'll go to the calendar. Appropriations, Senator Hobson. Pass and retain. Finance, Senator Harkins. We're on number 3, Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to skip items 3 through 11, have them retain their place on the calendar, and go to item number 12, Senate Bill 2850, and have the title read.
3 through 11, retain a place on the calendar. Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2850, cigarettes and vape products, require Commissioner of Revenue to establish separate directories to regulate sales of.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator Harkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the primary purpose of Senate Bill 2850 is to create and maintain a list of certified electronic smoking devices that can be sold in Mississippi, ENDS products, or also known as vapes. Several states around us have started creating directories to help retailers and wholesalers know what products are legally allowed in the United States. The FDA regulates this, and they are currently lots of products that are being sold that are not have not gone through that process. And so what this is an effort to do is to try to regulate and make sure that these products are safe for consumers. There's an assumption by consumers that these products are regulated and safe. That's just not the fact. The Centers for Disease Control estimates that more than half of the vapor products on the market nationwide consist of illicit products skirting the regulations designed to protect consumers. The Commissioner of Revenue will have the ability to remove manufacturer of vape products that are not in compliance with the law, and essentially that's what this bill does. It just creates a directory and helps retailers and wholesalers to know what products are allowed. That is an explanation of the bill. I will say that several states, Louisiana has a similar bill like this next door, and there's over 300 plus products on it, 17 different manufacturers that are on that one. So I have a feeling that our directory will probably look something similar to that and can expand as companies apply for a PMTA and are approved by the FDA. And there are a lot of products that are in process of being approved that have not been approved, but if they've already filed an application, they are allowed to sell until such point that the FDA denies or approves that application. So that is an explanation of the bill, and I do have an amendment at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Questions on the bill? Senator Hill, for what purpose?
I do have a question.
You yield for a question, Senator
I do.
Harkins? Senator Hill, you're recognized.
Senator Harkins, you mentioned Louisiana's bill that they have something similar to register these things. Did you also realize that Louisiana has a criminal penalty in their statute for this, for violation, similar to a bill I brought through here last year? Do we want to incur any criminal penalties like Louisiana has?
Well, I think at some point you have to, deter people from knowingly selling illegal products if they're illegal.
I agree. And it looks to me like this is just a bunch of fines and requiring foreign sellers to have an agent in Mississippi, and basically collecting fees for violations. But are you concerned that some of these folks have plenty of money to pay violations? That some of these companies may have plenty of money to pay for violations, but may not be deterred until they get a criminal penalty?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you, and I think this directory would go into effect in September, and obviously we can continue to look at it, and if we need to add additional penalties or something to look at and kind of see what other states have done, and see how those regulations have been,
Okay.
kind of lived out in the other states where they do have those type of penalties. I mean, maybe the fines are working, maybe they're not, and if we need to, we can certainly address that.
So this looks to me to be a 3/5 vote on this bill.
Yes,
Do you have a fiscal note or any way to know how much this is going to cost the Department of Revenue, or how much it's going to make for the Department of Revenue to get started on this?
I don't know.
Okay. I guess that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Any other questions on the bill? Senator?
I have an amendment at the appropriate time.
Amendment is appropriate time.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the amendment before you just states that to the extent that the federal code is amended or subsequent regulations or other official federal guidance or formal policy statement is issued changing compliance requirements or standards for ends products to become federally compliant, each manufacturer or ends product that is sold for retail sale in Mississippi shall submit documentation to the Commissioner substantiating compliance with such new federal requirements or standards within 30 days of the date of compliance with such requirement or standard is mandated. Failure to substantiate compliance with the new federal requirements or standards shall be grounds for removal of the manufacturer and its ends products from the directory established in this section. So there's concerns that the FDA may change the eligibility requirements, change the PMTA process to a new process, and if they do, if our law is based on the PMTA and they do away with it, then we don't want there to be any disruption in the market. So we're just saying that if they do change it, whatever the new requirement is what Mississippi will recognize as being legally allowed to be sold in the state. So that's the explanation of the amendment. I'd be happy to take any questions. If not, I move adoption of the amendment.
Senator Wiggins, for what purpose, sir?
Friendly question.
Senator Harkins, you yield for a question.
I do.
Senator Wiggins is recognized for a question on the amendment.
Well, so this amendment will allow maybe, or is this allowing for those that may not be captured now or whatever or allowed, that if they're going to change it, this is taking in others through that process?
All this does is says it right now, currently, the PMTA is the standard to get approved. If they change the method by which you approve ends products, say they do away with the PMTA process and they come up with a new ends procedure to allow vape products to be legal, whatever that new system is, that's what we'll recognize. So there was some concern that they may do away with that and come up with a new way to determine eligibility of the ends products. And if they do, we're just saying that will be what the standard is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wiggins. We're on the amendment. Senator Harkins.
Move
No
adoption of
further
the
questions.
amendment.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're ready on the bill.
No further question to move final passage on the morning roll call.
Use of morning roll call been requested. Does anyone object to the procedure? Or is voting no? Present? Seeing none, bill passes by use of... Pardon me? No? Present. Senator Parker, present. Anyone else? Anyone else? Bill passes by use of the morning roll call. Senator Parker voting present. Senator Harkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item 13, Senate Bill 2854, and have the title read.
Number 12 stays placed on the calendar. Number 13, Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2854, Tourism Project Incentive Program, renew, extend, and update investment requirements for hotel projects.
I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator.
I move we adopt the committee sub and recognize Senator Johnson to explain.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized to explain a committee substitute.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is in regards to the tourism rebate for hotels and resorts, and what it does is it ups the amounts that are required to qualify for that rebate program. Most of them go up by roughly $100 million, and the committee sub was just to add a reverse repealer, and that's an explanation of the committee sub and the bill.
Senator Hill, for what purpose?
Question, and I do apologize for asking you to read this, but my computer won't work on a daily basis, so I can't read it. Can you give me the definition of resort development in this bill?
Yes, bear with me just for a minute. There's a few different definitions, one for hotel, one for resort, and one for full-service hotel. Okay, resort development is on line 127, and it says it means a travel destination development with a minimum private investment of, and it goes from $100 million to $200 million, and consists of a hotel with a minimum of 200 guest rooms or suites and having a minimum private investment of $200,000 per guest room or suite, and guest amenities such as restaurants, golf courses, spas, fitness facilities, entertainment activities, and other amenities as determined by MDA.
So we're decreasing the amount of investment for that?
No, we
Or
are
increasing the amount of
increasing
investment?
the amount of investment. The only decrease is that under that same part I was reading about resorts, it says not more than an amount equal to, and it was 40%. We're lowering it to 30% of the private investment required by this paragraph may be expended on facilities to house retail activities. So essentially, currently, 40% of the investment can be towards retail, and we are lowering that to 30% so that more of the investment must go to the actual hotel part. So we're raising the total investment required and then lowering the amount.
So, yeah, so you're not as reliant on retail?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
If there's no further questions, move adoption of the committee sub.
Further questions on the substitute? Seeing none, Senator.
Move adoption of the committee substitute.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Senator, you need to vote for your own motion.
Aye.
Thank you. The ayes have it. All right, we're on the bill, Senator.
Move adoption using the morning roll call.
Use of morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Court is voting no. Present? Seeing none, the bill passes by use of the morning roll call. Senator Williams.
Order, Mr. President.
Pardon me?
Introduction out of order, Mr. President.
Please proceed, Senator.
If you would look in the South Gallery, Mr. Jason Camp from MSU is here on behalf of Senator Suber and Senator Whaley and myself. We want to welcome you to the Senate. Thank you.
Glad to have you here, Jason. All right, Senator Harkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item 14, Senate Bill 2856, and have the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2856, Local Governments Capital Improvement Revolving Loan Program, include any project MDA deems a capital improvement.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator Harkins.
I'd like to recognize Senator Johnson to explain the bill.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is regarding the capital improvements revolving loan program, and the way I understand it from MDA is that we currently come back every couple of years to add a new capital improvement to the law. This would expand it so that they can have more discretion over choosing those capital improvements. Again, it is specifically for capital improvements. It's just that we don't have to specifically define the ones being used every time a new one comes up. And so the bill expands MDA's authority to have more discretion over what a capital improvement is for the local, the revolving loan program. And that's an explanation of the bill.
Senator Blackman, for what purpose?
Question, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So this bill allows MDA to deem anything they want as a capital improvement. Is that right?
Well, I know you brought this up in committee, and I think the way that they answered that was it's not exactly carte blanche. It is specifically capital improvements, and it just reduces the time and effort of us having to add specific capital improvements to the bill, to the law.
But would you agree with me that the word any does give them carte blanche, right?
Capital improvements, specifically capital improvements, yes.
But the word any allows them to designate whatever it is under the sun they want to as a capital improvement.
On capital improvements.
Thank you.
Questions on the bill? Seeing none, Senator, we're ready.
Move adoption using the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Does anyone object to the procedure? The court is voting no. Blackman, no. Anyone else? Present. Anyone else? Seeing none, the bill passes. Senator Blackman voting no. Senator Harkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item 15, Senate Bill 2857, and have the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2857, Small Municipalities and Limited Population Counties Fund, increased grant amount that may be awarded by MDA.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to recognize Senator Johnson to explain the bill.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is the Small Municipality and Limited Population County grant program. Currently, MDA has a cap of $250,000. This would raise it to $1 million. This is subject to funding by appropriation, but as costs have increased significantly, this puts it more in line with what costs they run into on a local level for small counties, which I think small counties is defined as under 30,000 people, and small municipalities is under 10,000 people, I believe, per the bill. And that's an explanation of the bill.
Senator Turner, for what purpose, ma'am?
Question, Mr. President.
Are you for a question, Senator?
Yes.
Senator Turner is recognized for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator. Do we know how much was appropriated to this program last budget year?
I don't believe that it was funded last year.
It was not funded at all.
I'll double check that and let you know. I don't believe it was, though. Yes. 0.
And so I guess, and so the authority that you mentioned that MDA has to receive or for this program to be funded is currently $250,000?
Well, that's per grant, up to $250,000 per grant.
And so if this passes, the amount per grant would be up to $1 million, is that?
Yes, that's correct. And that's on, I have the strike through, it should be about the same, around lines 69 or 70.
And would there be any type of restriction as to, is it possible that one municipality can deplete the funding?
Well, I assume that's only based on what the appropriation amount is. And so, yes, that's possible. If the appropriation amount is $500,000 or $1 million, it could technically go to one.
Thank you.
Senator McMahon, for what purpose?
I'd like to be recognized to speak on the bill at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Senator. Further questions? Senator McMahon, if you'll come forward, sir. Further questions on the bill? Okay. Senator McMahon, you're recognized to speak on the bill. Didn't Senator Johnson reply?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President. Hey, I just wanted to speak in favor of this legislation. There were several members of this body that came to me this year and asked me for different pieces of legislation to create funds for the purposes of providing grants to municipalities, some for cleanup, some for economic purposes, some for any purpose. And I wanted to bring it to the body's attention that we're not going to move any of those pieces of legislation because this program already exists at MDA. And I'm hoping that the Chairman of Appropriations and the Chairman of Finance would put a significant amount of money in this year, $5–10 million, to help the municipalities across the state. It's managed by MDAs, so we won't have to we're not going to have to create any new type of regulations or empower any other agency to manage these funds. This is a really, really good piece of legislation. I hope the chairs will support. I hope the chairs will fund it. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McMahon. Senator Johnson, you're recognized to close.
If there are no further questions, I move adoption using the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Does anyone object to that procedure? Wish to be, of course, voting no. Present? Seeing none, passes by use of the morning roll call. Senator Kirby? Pass and retain, beginning on number 16, all the way over to number 38. Motions to reconsider? Motions to reconsider. Seeing none, we'll go to the general calendar. Number 47, Senator Fillingane. Pass and retain, 47, 48, and 49. Senator Williams. Senate, we're on number 50.
Mr. President, I'd like to skip item number 50 and ask that it keeps its place on the calendar.
50 retains its place on the calendar. We go to 51.
I'd like to ask that item number 51, Senate Bill 2298, the title be called up and read, please, sir.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
2298, construction bids, amend pre-qualified construction provisions.
Usual motions.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator Williams.
I'd like to be allowed to explain the bill, Mr. President.
You're recognized to explain your bill, sir.
This is a pre-qualification bill. It's simply, the language is really on lines 279. It says, or for any other construction procurement with a minimum construction cost of $10 million, where the agency or governing authority has determined that pre-qualification of bidders is in the best interest of the state. Simply what this does is when we've got projects over $10 million, we've got a situation, and this happened in my district a couple of years ago, where there might be concern about the qualification of the bidder, there's an allowable opportunity to investigate them further and their subcontractors to see if they're capable of doing the job. Example of this, if you've got a $15 or $20 million job, you've got a bidder that's come along that's maybe done $1-2 million jobs just to make sure that they have the financial ability and the depth to be able to do this job. We definitely want smaller contractors to be able to be scalable and do work for the state. At the same time, by going through this pre-qualification process, we can probably avoid several situations where, in my situation, in District 15, there was a bond that had to be called. There was a delay of about a year and probably a lot of financial pain for the contractor and for the state. With that, I'll yield to any questions, Mr. President.
Questions on the bill?
If there are no questions, I'd move by passage by use of the morning roll call.
Senator Hill, for what purpose, ma'am?
A question.
Will you yield for a question, Senator Williams?
Yes, sir, I do.
Please proceed, Senator Hill.
I'm looking at lines between 280 and 289, and it basically says that the determination of the pre-qualifications must be made not less than 15 working days before pre-qualified bidders are invited to submit bids. Are y'all concerned that that's a short period of time for somebody to know what the pre-qualifications are for a bid?
I think with this, you're going to put a group of people together with the governing body, probably DFA, that are going to sit there and speak with those contractors and our subcontractors. I think it's doable. If it's something that's a concern, I think we can definitely address it, though.
Hey, this is not my expertise area. I just, anytime when you're looking about RFQs and bids and stuff like that, you just want to be careful that it is fair to everybody. That's my main thing.
Yes, ma'am.
15 days is kind of short to me, but if that's common, then I guess it's fine.
Thank you for the question.
Other questions on the bill?
Move for passage by use of the morning roll call.
Use of the
Mr.
morning
President.
roll call has been requested. Anyone object to that procedure? Of course, voting no. Present. Bill passes by use of the morning roll call. Senator?
I'd like to move to the next bill, bill number 52 on the calendar, Senate Bill 2301. Ask the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2301, DFA authorized to acquire certain parcels on East Hamilton Street in Jackson, Mississippi.
Use your motions.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Senator?
I'd like to be asked to explain the bill, sir.
You're recognized to explain the bill, sir.
This is simply a bill authorizing DFA to go into purchase process for 3 parcels of land. It's over behind the Robert E. Lee building. These parcels are owned by Mississippi College. The intent of these parcels, it's blighted property that if the state purchases these properties will be made into parking lots. As myself and other senators are coming with different legislation this year, we're looking at bringing more of the government services back downtown as we renovate more of these buildings that the state has, and parking is something that we're deficient in. And again, these properties would be used for that purpose. I will yield to any questions, Mr. President.
Questions on the bill? Seeing none, Senator?
I would move for passage by use of the morning roll call, Mr. President.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Court is voting no. Present.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Seeing none, the bill passes by use of the morning roll call. Thank you, Senator Williams. Senator Fillingham?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to that item called up and have the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2190, driver's license, amend provisions related to.
I make the usual motion.
So use motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you'll recognize Senator Barrett to explain the committee substitute and handle the bill.
Senator Barrett, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President. This is a bill that's brought to us from DPS. It has a lot of, I guess, small changes to the current law. You'll see in the bill, or actually the committee substitute, 6313 defines what a system of record is, and that is, if you were in the committee meeting, that's the database system, computer software that DPS is using. That'll be what's commonly referred to now as system of record. Section 63-115 states that the commissioner may promulgate rules and regulations to effectuate this chapter. Obviously, he'll need the ability to promulgate the rules and regs to operate this new computer software systems. Section 63-116 will delete the requirement that the Wait Anywhere appointment program be made available on the Driver Service Bureau's website. 63-117 is amended to update certain language related to bookkeeping and record keeping. 63-145 is amended to revise mechanisms of keeping records. Essentially, persons working in the system will give receipts to persons that come in and purchase their license. Those funds that are received from application process will be subject to an audit at any time by the department. 63-151 amends language regarding providing notice to applicants. One thing that says is a person shall mail to DPS at Jackson, Mississippi. It removes Jackson, Mississippi. Section 63-152 amends the method of service for notice of suspensions, cancellations, or revocations. I think it adds a mobile option. And finally, Section 63-134 requires the Commissioner of Public Safety to prepare and make available assistive videotapes for reading impaired applicants, and that'll be repealed. At this point, Mr. President, I yield for any questions.
Questions?
And Mr. President, if there are no questions, I move that the committee substitute be adopted for consideration in lieu of the original bill.
Seeing no questions, all in favor of the committee substitute, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Senator Barrett, you need to vote too.
Aye.
That'll go that way.
Thank you.
Now, we'll go back to the bill, sir.
And I suggest usage of the morning roll call for final passage.
Use of morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to that procedure? Court is voting no. Present. Seeing none, the bill passes. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Blackwell, we're on 54, Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item 54, Senate Bill 2386, and ask the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2386, Medicaid Reimbursement Services, Beneficiaries, Hospital Assessments, and related provisions, bring forward sections related to.
I'd like to be recognized to explain the bill. You make the usual motion.
Makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
I'd like to be recognized to explain the bill.
You're recognized, Senator. Explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. All this bill is just a simple placeholder for Medicaid in the event that things change in Washington and there's more of an acceptable favor for expansion. That's all this bill does. It brings up only the code sections. I'll yield, and I have an amendment at the proper time, Mr. President. I'll yield for questions.
Yes, Senator Hill. For what purpose, ma'am?
Question.
You for a question, Senator?
Absolutely.
So this only brings forth code sections, this bill?
Yes, ma'am.
So there's no new changes, it's just bringing forth?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I've got an amendment that's going to.
I'm sorry.
I've got an amendment that's going to solidify this.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, Senator Blackwell, you're recognized.
I have an amendment that will, we're going to insert a reverse repealer. I think that's on this. So
We have it on the screen, Senator. Thank you. We're ready to go.
I move we adopt the amendment.
Questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, Senator Blackwell.
If no further questions, move for passage by the use of the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Senator Simmons, for what purpose, sir?
Just a question, Mr. President.
You for a question, Senator?
Yes, it will.
Okay, Senator Simmons is recognized.
Is this the Medicaid tech bill?
No, it's not. It's just a placeholder. For,
Oh, okay.
tech bill we'll bring up next week.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Simmons. Any further questions? Okay, now we're ready. Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Did anyone object to that procedure? Wish to be, of course, voting no? Hill, No. Anyone else? Chisholm? No. Anyone else? Anyone else? Present? Seeing none, the bill passes with Senator Hill, Senator Chisholm voting no. Barnett? Pass and retain. Carter? Carter? Pass and retain. Younger? Senator Younger, we're on 58. Senator?
Yes, sir. Could I get the title read, please?
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2256, concrete trucks, increased maximum gross weight of.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
I've got a friendly amendment to this, and I'd like Senator McMahon to present it.
Senator McMahon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Senator Uger. I've got I don't serve on transportation, but I went to the chair and discussed this amendment with him. It's a friendly amendment. It basically will conform the Senate legislation to the same thing that the House of Representatives is doing. Ask the amendment be read.
Amend on line 95 by inserting the following after the word gross vehicle. Amend on lines 95 through 96 by deleting 60,000 pounds and inserting in lieu thereof the following. 64,000 pounds for such vehicles with 3 axle configurements, and further that the maximum weight shall adhere to the limits imposed on the axle distribution weight as follows. 25,000 pounds for any single axle, 48,000 pounds for any 2 axle tandem, and 57,000 pounds for any 3 axle tandem. Further amend the title to conform by inserting the following after the word concrete on line 3, and vehicles transporting solid waste.
The crutch of the bill is just to conform the Senate language to the House and to be sure that solid waste is a priority for the Senate as well, including concrete. I yield for any questions.
Questions on the bill? Questions on the bill? Senator Whaley, for what purpose, sir?
Question, please.
Are you for a question, Senator?
I do.
Senator Whaley is recognized for a question.
What are we changing from the original bill that we had to your amendment? Can you explain to me what the difference is?
Yes, sir. We're adding solid waste, and we're adding solid waste and adding the language for the single axle, the double axle, and for the triple axle trucks.
Thank
you. Okay.
Okay, other questions? Other questions? Seeing none, Senator?
I move for passage of the amendment. I move for adoption of the amendment.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
If there are any other questions, I yield.
Yes. What this bill does is it increases the weight for the cement trucks to be in line with the other states around us. Alabama's 3-axle gross weight truck is 66,000. This will increase ours to 64,000. Louisiana's 3-axle gross weight would be 69,000. Tennessee's will be 66,000. So we'll still be underweight compared to the states all around us. And I just think this is good business, and if we're going to be in business, we have to be in line with the other states around us. If there's no further questions, make use of the morning roll call.
Senator Polk, for what purpose, sir?
Question?
You for a question, Senator?
Yes, sir, I do.
Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We compare ourselves to other states, but we have a road maintenance problem here in Mississippi, or we say we do. My question is this: what are those other states adding to their fuel tax to keep their repair and maintenance going?
What are they doing with their fuel tax? Well, they're higher than ours.
So we're going to get close to them in weight, but we're going to have less funds than them to do this.
Well, I believe it's up to this body to come up in fuel tax also eventually one day.
Okay, thank you very much.
If you're going to be in business, you better be in business.
Senator Bryan, for what purpose, sir?
A question.
Were you for a question, Senator?
Yes, I do.
Senator Bryan, you're recognized.
Isn't it true there are plenty of ways to fund road construction and maintenance without raising the fuel tax?
I welcome that idea, Senator
Thank you.
Bryan. Thank you.
Other questions on the bill? Senator Seymour, for what purpose, sir?
Question, Mr. President.
You yield, Senator?
I don't really think I should, but I will.
Senator Seymour, you're recognized for a question, sir.
I believe this would have a little bit of a variance on it, but we're not addressing the pounds per square inch of displacement. That would change also as far as your limitation. Should we not go up on that amount also?
It's in the bill. Let me find it for you, Senator Seymour.
I'll take your word for it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, Senator, we're ready for your motions.
I'd make use of the morning roll call for passage, please.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to that procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no. Polk, no. Anyone else? Anyone else? Present? Present? Seeing none, the bill passes by use of the morning roll call. Senator Polk voting no. Senator Younger? Pass and retain. Senator Johnson? Pass and retain. Senator McCon? Pass and retain. Senator Bryan? We're on 62, Senate. Senator Bryan.
I ask that the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2679, Department of Human Services allow agency discretion for establishing or using certain federal reporting systems.
I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator.
Mr. President, the current law requires the state of Mississippi to essentially penalize itself when recipients make mistakes that have no effect at all on their eligibility. No other state in the country does this. The effect of it is to create artificially high error rates for the state of Mississippi, and there's no benefit to the system in terms of security or making sure that only the right people are getting benefits. So this would just allow the agency discretion to continue using that or use any other thing, any other similar method. If there are no questions, I suggest use of the morning roll call.
Questions on the bill? Senator Hill, for what purpose, ma'am?
Question.
You have for a
Yes.
question, Senator Bryan. Senator Hill is recognized for a question on this bill.
So will there still be means testing or validation of eligibility? Because isn't that what comes from the errors of, because Joey had this, Senator Fillingame, I believe, had a similar bill last year or year before that. Are we talking about errors in qualifications, or what kind of errors are we talking about?
This happens. If a beneficiary's income changes, the beneficiary is required to report that income. Mm-hmm. If the income change has no effect at all on benefits, under the legislation that got on the books several years back, that's considered an error. No other state in the union does that. But because we have established these so-called errors, that means that Mississippi gets penalized and could conceivably cost us quite a bit of money. This just gives the agency itself the authority to use whatever system it wants.
Thank you.
Sure.
Questions on the bill? Senator Bryan, see no further questions.
Morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? To be recorded as voting no. Chisholm, no. Hill, no. Anyone else? Anyone else? Present. Present. Seeing none, bill passes. Use of morning roll call. Hill, Chisholm voting no. Senator Bryan?
Mr. President, I would like to pass item 63, let it retain its place on the calendar, go to item 64.
Item 63 retains its place on the calendar. Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2698, Mississippi Dementia Care Program, extend period of operation of.
I make the usual
Senator
motion.
makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Mr. President, the Dementia Care Program has been existing for a number of years. It seems to be working well. This would just remove the repealer. If there are no questions, I suggest use of the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to that procedure? Court is voting no. Present. Seeing none, bill passes.
Mr. President, I would like to pass item 65, 66, go to item 67, and ask that the title be read.
65 and 66 retain place on the calendar. 67, Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2075, Board of Medical Licensure, revised licensure status, definitions, procedure, fines, and temporary practice authority.
I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator?
Suggest use of the committee substitute in lieu of the
Last one
original bill.
here.
I move we
We'll
use
start
the,
with Turner Ford.
move we adopt the committee substitute in lieu of the original bill.
You're recognized to explain the substitute, Senator.
I would offer a technical amendment at this time to the committee substitute.
You're recognized to explain the amendment. Do we have it up on the screen, ma'am? 1 second, please, Senator. Do we have the amendment, sir?
The amendment's a technical amendment. I can go ahead and explain the bill. This is the legislation concerning the Board of Medical Licensure. The existing statute on the books has been there for a number of years. It's very antiquated. The bill before you just lets the board deal with things as they are now. For example, there's a requirement that the board actually meet in the Capitol to review applications, and that actually doesn't happen anymore. One of the things that's happened over the years is there are programs for doctors who are having problems with addiction of various types, and there's a method of restricting a doctor's practice and as is appropriate concerning the degree of disability, matters such as that. I think they've worked hard with various organizations to remove any questions that they have. If the technical amendment's not available, we can just go ahead and vote on the committee substitute.
Senator, we can vote on the committee substitute. Is that your motion, sir?
I move adoption of the committee substitute.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're waiting on the amendment, Senator. One moment.
I think the amendment's arrived, so we can put that on the board.
Just one moment, please, sir. Okay, it's on the board now, Senator.
This deals primarily with syntax. There is a method of originally notifying a doctor when the proceeding begins. This just makes clear the doctor is originally notified by either personal service of process or certified mail with return receipt requested, as would be the case with a lawsuit. It changes the phrase "or may be" to "unless it is," which is just syntax, and it makes clear that the appeals go to the Chancery Court in Hinds County rather than being vague about that. I move adoption of the amendment.
Questions on the amendment? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, Senator.
I suggest use of the morning roll call.
Use of morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to procedure? It should be recorded as voting no. President Hill. Anyone else? Anyone else? Bill passes. Senator Hill voting present. Use of the morning roll call. Senator Turner Ford. She just passed on this and passed and retained, so you can go down to Chaston.
Senator Chasnall. Passes. Senator Parker. Passes. Senator Michelle. Pass and retain. Senator Suber. Pass and retain. Senator Boyd. Pass and retain. Page 9, Senator Polk. Pass and retain. Senator England. Pass and retain. Senator Robinson. Pass and retain. Senator Filligain. Item 95.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item number 95, call it up and have the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2334, camping, soliciting contributions, loitering, prohibit certain instances of.
Make the usual motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
I'd like to be recognized to explain the committee's substitute in lieu of the original bill.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. The pages are passing out a summary of the bill that I'll be going over with you all, because it's sort of a lengthy bill, and it just, for me, it helps to have something in front of me to look at as we go through. But I'll explain it, and then, of course, be glad to try to answer any questions. So, as you all know, we've been dealing across the country, not just here in Mississippi, with an ever-increasing amount of homelessness, vagrancy, aggressive solicitation type issues. And again, this is statewide. I've seen it obviously here in the capital city, but I've seen it back home in Hattiesburg. I understand it's in Tupelo on the coast, just pretty much everywhere. It's sort of a universal problem that we're facing. And many of you have filed bills trying to address various pieces of this issue. So in conjunction with working with the Lieutenant Governor's Office and many of you all, including Senator McMahon in particular, and the Municipalities Committee, we held a hearing at the beginning of session and heard from a lot of the stakeholders from the various municipalities, the Hinds County Sheriff's Department, and various others involved in different pieces of this, including mental health. And this is sort of our best effort to try, in an omnibus sort of way, to try to deal with some of the issues that many of you have raised and that we have all, heard from our mayors about and things of this nature. So with that introduction, I'll just dive right in and you can follow along, and then we'll get into the questions if need be. So the committee substitute creates a new criminal offense to prohibit certain instances of the camping, the soliciting contributions, aggressive panhandling, and the loitering that we're experiencing across the state. It also requires a person to have a permit for soliciting contributions and authorizes the prosecuting attorney of local governments to remove encampments under a public nuisance action. Specifically in Section 1, it provides it's unlawful for a person to camp, and then if you'll look on the very bottom of the first page, the term camp is defined, in case you're curious as to what the definition is, in the following places: on any street, sidewalk, public right-of-way, any public property, or within 1,000 feet of critical infrastructure. And again, that definition of critical infrastructure is defined in the footnote at the bottom of the first page, unless the location is designated by the local governing authority for the purposes of camping specifically. Then in the first section, you get into the violations. So for a first offense, again, we want to keep it very manageable and not too punitive. So we just make it a misdemeanor, a fine not to exceed $100. For second or subsequent offenses, then of course we graduate those on up, a fine not exceeding $250, or a county jail for not less than 5 days, nor more than 4 months, or both, the fine and the imprisonment. Section 1 does require a notice to the offender of 48 hours. So the way this works is if you're a law enforcement officer riding around the county, or you get a call from some property owner or just a citizen saying, hey, there's a camp being built or that exists over here on this public property, the officer has to go out and speak to the offender if they can be found. If not, obviously, some sort of written notice on their campsite and say within 48 hours, if you're not moving this, we can come and take further action. So a 48-hour window must be given to give that person an opportunity to move along and have no problems with the authorities. Section 2 provides a violation of the prohibition on camping is a public nuisance and may be enjoined, abated, or prevented by a prosecuting attorney on the applicable jurisdiction. The section also authorizes property owners in a municipality or county to request the assistance of law enforcement officers to remove an encampment or to set up any barriers to prevent said encampments. Second page of the summary, Section 3 prohibits soliciting for contributions upon any street, sidewalk, or public right-of-way without first obtaining a permit from the appropriate local governing authority. That would be either the county or the city, whichever the spot is located in. The section sets forth a procedure for obtaining said permit and sets limits upon the permit. A violation of this section, again, is only a misdemeanor with a first fine for a first offense not exceeding $100, a second or subsequent offense, a fine not exceeding $250, or county jail for not less than 5 days, no more than 4 months. And again, this is a situation where you're seeing people, I know back home, on the weekends especially, you'll be driving up to a busy intersection and there'll be 4 or 5 people with little orange vests and a bucket saying, contribute, and sometimes they'll even tap on your windows and those sorts of things. So if this were to become law, those people can still do that, but first they must apply for a permit so you know who they are, where they're going to be soliciting in case law enforcement needs to have additional people out there monitoring to keep the person safe, as well as people from being inhibited from their traveling back and forth. And so that's what this is about. Section 4 creates the misdemeanor offense of loitering. Again, a first offense being a misdemeanor not exceeding $100, and the second or subsequent offenses, the fines $250 or less, or the county jail not less than 2 days, no more than 15 days, or both. Section 5 creates the misdemeanor offense of aggressive panhandling, and that is defined, again, as touching the person, prohibiting them from moving their vehicle, forward without, hitting the person, that type of thing. And for a first offense, a fine not exceeding $500, county jail for not more than 30 days. Second or subsequent offenses are more, a fine not exceeding $250, or county jail not less than 15 days, no more than 6 months. Section 6 further provides that convictions under this act shall not appear on a person's public record. Again, we're not trying to cause people problems in getting jobs or applying for work, that sort of thing, so we don't want a public record created, but it does authorize the court of conviction and law enforcement authorities to keep a confidential record so that they can tell if it's a first offense, a second, or subsequent offense. Section 7 provides that any person arrested under this act and transported to a county or municipal jail who appears to be in need of mental health and or substance abuse help shall be evaluated for the need for said services. If the evaluation reveals the person is in fact in need of such health services, both mental health or substance abuse help, the person shall be provided the services by an appropriate entity, authority, commission, or agency. This was Senator Norwood's very good amendment because, again, we're not trying to make criminals out of anybody, but the testimony from the hearing revealed that about 85% of people that are in these homeless type situations either have a substance abuse problem or a mental health issue or a combination of both. So again, if this is an opportunity to get them evaluated and get them connected to the resources that can help them get beyond their issues or get back on their medications or get clean, whatever the case may be, that's certainly something we would all like to see happen. And finally, Sections 6 and 7 amends Sections 21.19.11 and 19.5.105 to authorize municipalities and counties to remove encampments as defined by Section 1 of this Act on private property. Because oftentimes what you'll find is in some of these instances you have absentee landlords or landowners, people that live out of state who aren't seeing on the day-to-day basis what's happening on their land that they own because they're in Colorado or California or wherever. And if you don't have the ability for local law enforcement to come in and help try to clean some of that up, a lot of times it just doesn't happen very quickly. So that is a not too brief, but hopefully not too long explanation of the bill either. And again, I will be happy to try to answer any questions.
All right. Senator Norwood for a question.
Yes, Mr. President.
Do you yield, Senator?
Yes, sir.
Senator Norwood, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Fillingame. I agree with you. I'm going to start off by that. I agree with you that it is a problem.
Yes, sir.
Homelessness is a problem. And, and I'll just speak briefly about, do you travel, I guess that's West Street, right across from where the Clarion Ledger, between the Clarion Ledger, the Jackson Police Department, and the State Department of Human Services is located?
Yes, sir.
Homeless guys are there normally every day.
Yes, sir.
And there's a reason that they're there. Now, I think services are in some cases, mental illness is a problem, and I can appreciate that the fact that we would make some resources available once they are incarcerated.
Sure.
But I think that, don't you think that it would be better if we put some of these services, or really employ the departments to be proactive in trying to get some of these guys off the street, because if you take them to jail, they can't afford, they're not going to be able to bail out. They're going to sit there and they'll get 3 meals and a card, whatever it is, and then they're back out on the street. So actually, we have not done anything to eradicate or even advance less homeless people on the street. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with part of your statement. I agree with you on your amendment in committee that it's pointless just to pick someone up, house them for a short period of time, and turn them right back out onto the street without first evaluating them to see, in fact, what the underlying cause of the problem is. And if you discover, as is so often the case, based on the testimony we heard at the hearing, that there is a chemical substance abuse or a mental health issue, or a lot of times both, they kind of play off of each other, then you're not really doing anything if you don't connect those people with the services that they need, either mental and or substance abuse or both. And so I think that's why it's so critical that you put that language in there, and I think the committee wholeheartedly endorsed that issue, because you're right, if it's nothing more than a revolving door of people coming in and coming out, you haven't really done much. But if you take that opportunity to show them there's a different path, and we are connecting you with the services whereby you may get on that right path. Again, you can't force anybody to do anything to better himself or herself, but we can, as a public policymakers, give them that opportunity to take that detour off of the path they're on and get onto the right path, hopefully. And I think that would be a huge step in the right direction if we can accomplish that with this legislation.
Okay, and I agree again in part to that.
Sure.
Do we have any provisions in here that will hold the Department of Mental Health, the Department of Correction accountable for individuals that are released into, and especially here in the city of Jackson? Do we have any penalties, if you will, that would penalize these institutions for releasing individuals without, they're supposed to have a physical address before they're released, but some of these guys we know are not given physical addresses, but they are being released, and they're being released to the streets to impact the homeless population. Do we have any provisions? Are we going to penalize those guys for doing that?
Well, we certainly don't penalize our government workers, our DHS workers, CPS workers, law enforcement officers for doing their job. I mean, we're laying a framework whereby, let me back up a step. In the hearing, we heard from several law enforcement officers, as you'll recall, who said the problem is we really have no tools. And, over the years, the legislature has done away with some of the penalties that we had previously on the books. And what that means is when you approach that individual and say, hey, you don't need to be camping out here, you don't need to be doing drugs on the street corner. If they say, go jump in a lake, I don't care. It's my constitutional right to be here doing this. The law enforcement pretty much right now has to leave. I mean, there's nothing that they can hold over that person and say, no, this is a violation of the code, both criminal and or civil, and you're either going to move or we're going to move you. I mean, that's where it comes down to at some point, unfortunately, and that's why you give them 48 hours notice, and if they still don't move, then you take the next step and it escalates. But if you don't give the law enforcement officers the opportunity, both a carrot and a stick, not just one or the other, then you really have tied one of their hands behind their back. So we're trying to take a holistic approach and not just be punitive, but also offer the connection to the social services that these people so desperately need. But again, if you're asking, are you going to fine a police officer if they release somebody back onto the street and they go back to the street? Of course, we can't do that.
No, I'm saying for an individual to be released from the Department of Corrections, they're supposed to have a physical address
Right.
they're going to. And I'm saying if the Department of Correction would release individuals without a physical address, are there any consequences that will be held, or how we're going to hold the Department of Correction accountable for releasing individuals to the street when they know they have no physical address?
Well, I would defer to my colleague, the Corrections Chairman, Senator Barnett, to answer that question. That's not a part of this bill, so I haven't researched that, but I can certainly connect with Senator Barnett and get back with you on that.
Okay, okay. The sheriff, Hinds County Sheriff, is in opposition to this legislation. The police, Chief of Police is in opposition to this. I think everybody want a solution, but putting the responsibility on them to house these guys is not the solution is not a solution I think that we would want, because Jackson I know has, and certainly something has to be done, something needs to be done, but I just think that this is not the answer to try and solve this problem. Do you know how much money do we appropriate to address homelessness in our state?
It's a very expensive issue, and I'm glad you pointed that out. Doing nothing is not an inexpensive proposition either, because that's what's happening now. And so if you're saying they don't want the responsibility, they already have the responsibility. They just have no tools with which to carry out the responsibilities. Because what happens now is that the people, they stay there, they either get hit, they're high on whatever, they stumble out on the street, they get hit by some passerby, they ruin that person's, car, but more importantly, in many instances, they get killed or maimed terribly. You know this. You represent parts of this wonderful capital city, and it is all too often the case that people, they're having some mental episode, they're having some sort of chemical dependency episode. They either hurt themselves, they hurt someone else and themselves, or they just hurt the other person, and then you have to arrest them because now they're guilty of some sort of aggravated assault or some sort of DUI, some sort of hit and run. I mean, just the idea that you can do nothing and I'm opposed to something because it's not perfect. If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. You've heard that phrase before. Just doing nothing, I think, is not the solution. And so, of course, if you're opposed to this legislation, you have my utmost respect as always, and we'll try something else. But this is an honest effort to try and take many of the bills that have been filed in this body and inculcate them into one particular bill, sort of an omnibus type bill, to try and address some of these issues. And again, I'm sure it's not perfect, but it's certainly a lot better than what we have now, which is very little of anything.
Did you meet with the continuums of care for the state of Mississippi?
Oh, we had several. I mean, you were sitting in on the meeting. We had the Hinds County Sheriff. We had representatives from the city of Hattiesburg, from I think the Tupelo area. I know the chief of police from Tupelo, I believe, was there. We invited members from all over the state. And what we heard was that, again, 85+% of persons that we find in these situations either have a mental health issue or a chemical dependency issue or both. And so a lot of it sort of boils down to getting people the services that, for whatever reason, they have not availed themselves of or didn't have the opportunity to connect with. And if by doing this we can connect those people to some of these services, I think we're all better off for it.
Well, the continuum of care, we've met with individual providers, but I'm talking about the continuum of care, which we have, I think, 3 that service the entire state. With the federal dollars that come into the state, the emergency shelter grant dollars, they basically administer those dollars in concert with some of the providers. But I think part of our problem is that we do not have a comprehensive plan to address homelessness. Sure. And what we have is several providers, but those providers are acting solo in so many cases. I think that if we had a study group, if you will, that would basically connect those continuum of care, I think that we can do a better job of. And I just don't see this. But I appreciate, you're incorporating the amendment.
Yes, sir.
But there again, this is not going to. If we're seriously talking about trying to address homelessness, this is not going to do it. This is going to kick the can a little further down the road, but it's not going to address that. So I would hope that we will continue to work on this.
Yes, sir.
In conjunction with the continuums of care and the law enforcement to come up with a viable solution to this issue. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate your comments, your participation in the committee, and your questions on the floor. I think part of the reason that maybe states are just now trying to tackle some of these issues is because, as I'm sure you're aware, the U.S. Supreme Court, just this past term in the Grants Pass decision, finally ruled that localities, local governments, city governments, county governments, states, do in fact have a public interest in making sure that homeless encampments and things of this nature don't just crop up and stay on public property. There had been an ongoing constitutional argument by some proponents of folks that thought that they had a constitutional right to sleep under the stars anywhere they wanted to, whether it be public or private property. And the Supreme Court, in a fairly overwhelming fashion that cut across the ideological lines that we're used to, said no, states and counties and cities do in fact have a public interest in controlling that sort of thing, not only to make it, safer for the public, but also to make it safer for the individuals who are participating themselves in, camping on public property or soliciting or those sorts of things. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Senator Norwood. Senator Blackwell for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask the Senate to draw their attention to the North Gallery. We have the Mississippi Hospital Association's emerging leaders up there. These are young professionals from around the state. Let's give them a good welcome.
Thank you. Welcome to the Capitol. Senator Simmons for a question.
Yes, Mr. President.
You yield?
Yes, sir.
You're recognized, Senator Simmons, for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator, for yielding. Chairman Fillingane, I really appreciate your leadership and your work on this. I know, as you indicated, that there were several pieces of legislation addressing this issue, certainly after the Supreme Court ruling. Senator Norwood mentioned the position of his sheriff, and I know his sheriff has been quite vocal on how he feels about this legislation. Have you heard from or got a position from other law enforcement around the state regarding this bill?
I have not. In fact, the sheriff of Hinds County was one of our presenters and was one, in fact, that said, you've tied our hands behind our back. Over the years, you've taken away all of the tools on the statutory code on the way of criminal restrictions. And so now when me and my officers go out and confront these individuals and they tell us, leave us alone, we pretty much have to leave them alone. So he was imploring us to pass something. Now, I don't mean to say that he saw the final product, because that was at a hearing some weeks before we ever even took up this legislation. But his testimony was key, in my mind at least, to say, hey, we don't have the tools. You guys have taken it away from us, and y'all need to do something. So obviously, as I was having the conversation with Senator Norwood, who I truly do respect so much for all the work he does here in the capital city, I make no bones about it. This is, I'm sure, is not a perfect bill. I've never seen a perfect piece of legislation to start with, but it is an honest effort to try and give our law enforcement officers some tools that they can use to try to move these people in the right direction. But to answer your broader question, no, I've not heard from any opposition from law enforcement. In fact, some of the people that we were working with, another presenter at our hearing was Stephen Maxwell, who had previously been the head of Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics and is now with the Mississippi Department of Corrections. He's been working with our Circuit Judges Association on a task force to try to address these issues, and these were some of his recommendations. So just the opposite. We've actually worked hand in glove with our law enforcement partners to try to develop this legislation.
And a lot of this issue is primarily in a lot of our cities. Have you heard from, or is there a position from MML or our cities regarding this legislation?
Well, I heard from some of our members from the Gulf Coast who said, and I think from the Lieutenant Governor's office, who said at meetings previously in the out-of-session period of time this past year, the number one issue that the municipal mayors down on the Gulf Coast cited as the thing they needed help with the most was the homelessness issue, was the the vagrancy, the aggressive panhandling. They are asking for us to assist them in getting this under control. So I can't tell you that MML has issued a statement supporting this piece of legislation, but it was the complaints and basically the call for help from the municipal association leaders who led to this particular piece of legislation.
And one final question, and we all recognize that homelessness is certainly a problem, and I guess to double down on what Senator Norwood's point is that still in this body, the real question is what are we going to do regarding providing the resources that are certainly needed to really address the issue if what you say is true about 85% or so may be suffering from some mental disease or defect or some dependency issue, then the question is, are we going to really fund that to really address the issue of homelessness? So my last question is, what do you say about what a lot of people have said about this legislation and the ones that have been proposed in the House about, are we in fact criminalizing homelessness? What are your comments or remarks on that?
Thank you for the question. The answer is no. We're criminalizing a behavior that puts people personally in harm's way themselves. So many people overdose on the streets. So many people, again, I'm not being flip when I say stumble out in front of oncoming traffic and get hit and either maim, injure, or sometimes get killed. The focus of this isn't on cleaning up the streets so we don't have to look at these people. I mean, this is a real part of our society. The focus has got to be on getting these people not just off the street, but back into society, much the same way the Department of Corrections has to try to do with people that have broken the criminal code. So, I mean, all I can tell you is that Wendy Bailey, who I highly respect, who is the head of our Department of Mental Health Resources, she also testified at our hearing, and she provided a lot of the background for the underlying causes. And I think you spoke to that through some of your questioning so eloquently, that we're not trying to criminalize people who have gotten to a place in their life, sometimes maybe not through even their own creation, but through circumstances beyond their control. We have got to reach out to these people. At the same time, we have to give law enforcement the tools with which to address, because if all you can do is walk up to someone and say, hey, can I offer you a hand? And they say, go do whatever. You have to be able to say, okay, well, I'm going to come back and check on you in 48 hours. And if we still find you here, still in the same situation, we're going to help you, whether you want the help or not. That's kind of where this bill is going.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Simmons. Senator Michelle for an introduction.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Mr. President. I'm blessed to have a group of fifth grade students from St. Augustine School in Richmond. Would y'all stand so we can welcome you to the State Senate, please?
Welcome to your state capitol. Senator McMahon for a question.
Yes, sir.
You yield?
Yes.
You're recognized, Senator McMahon, for a question.
Senator Fillingane, I want to thank you for your work on this and for the holding those hearings this year. This is a work in, you would agree this is a work in progress. We're continuing to take calls and filter information.
100%.
Based on that, I looked at the bill. It doesn't have a reverse repealer in it. Instead of discussing a lot of amendments and some things that have come in, would you entertain if we just put a reverse repealer?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And any amendments that the body would like to offer. Again, we tried to, through your leadership, really this hearing, you got most of the members to come to speak, and I want to thank you publicly for that. But there were lots of ideas thrown out, and not every one of them has probably found its way into this bill. But this is an honest effort on, I think, your and my part to try to get a piece of legislation before the body that's a starting point at the very least, because we keep hearing these complaints constantly from our citizenry. I know I do. People are constantly calling me and saying, hey, can't you clean up this person that's camped out in a sleeping bag next to the dumpster next to the Trustmark Bank on Hardy Street? People call the law enforcement. They go out there and check on these people. Really, all they can do is say, hey, are you okay right now? I mean, that's all they can really do. They have no tools to speak of wherewith to try to advance that person to a better place in his or her life. And that's very sad, but that's where we find ourselves. And so this is an honest effort to try and do something about that. I don't claim that it's perfect or that it's the end-all be-all or any of that. So it's just an honest effort to try to help our law enforcement community and try to help these people get on a better path.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Senator Seymour for a question.
Question, Mr. President.
Sure.
You recognize?
Yes, sir.
All right. You recognize, Senator, for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this, it's using any motor vehicle as the person's place of sleep for one or more nights or days. Are we now criminalizing a tractor trailer driver that's going to pull over on the side of the road for a night, as well as somebody commuting from college or something that does not have enough money to stay in a hotel, but they pull over, they're going to get jammed up because the
Absolutely
law states one?
Absolutely not. Thank you for the question. So if you're talking about people that sleep in the back of their camper trailers en route back and forth across country, number one, they're not staying at a place where they're going to be served a notice, and then 48 hours later, someone comes back and they're still there at the same spot. I mean, these people are moving across country. If you're talking about someone who is living out of his or her car and parked alongside someone's private property and camping out of their car, yeah.
It's saying just one or more nights, so I mean one night.
But there's a notice requirement, a 48-hour notice. So the law enforcement, number one, there has to be a complaint. So they go out there and check on the situation. They tell the person, hey, you're not where you're supposed to be. This is either public property or this is private property that you don't own, and the landowner doesn't want you here. You're committing trespass. So we're going to come back 48 hours later and check on you to make sure you've moved along. But if you're still there, then yeah, these restrictions would kick in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Horn for a question.
Question.
Or do you yield?
Certainly.
You're recognized, Senator Horn, for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Fillingane. I, too, appreciate your efforts on this issue. How many law enforcement officers have said that they favor this bill in its current form?
Well, none have approached me who said they do not, and the ones that we had at our hearing, I think there were probably 3 or 4 different law enforcement officers of different varieties. There was the police chief, I think, from Tupelo. We had the Hinds County Sheriff to speak. We had Mr. Maxwell, who was with MDOC, speak. So, I've been in contact with a number of law enforcement authorities, and they are all asking for assistance because the status quo just isn't acceptable in their opinion.
Thank you. And I have not heard from my local law enforcement officials, but listening to Senator Norwood, it does give me pause. You're aware that in Hinds County, we're under a consent decree with the Justice Department on overcrowding?
Yes, sir.
And so if we pass this bill, it's going to put more burden on the Sheriff's Department and their facilities, and taking up space where the real criminals might otherwise be housed. I like the concept of what you're doing, but I'm probably going to vote no on the bill on the basis of some things that have been addressed by other members. Are we planning to put any resources to help these law enforcement entities find space or cover the cost of housing these folks who might be arrested for violations?
Well, let me unpack that series of questions, if I could. And if I were a resident of the city of Jackson, I'd be campaigning for you for mayor, Senator Horn, because I think your interest in the city of Jackson is at the forefront. And so I appreciate the work you've done here representing Hinds County and the city of Jackson, particularly in the Senate and your work. But specifically to your question, I think it may have actually the opposite effect. I think if people know that if I don't abide by what the law enforcement officer asked me to do, and I'm going to end up being placed in jail overnight for a couple of nights, I think a couple of things are going to happen. I think you're not going to have people choosing the ones that can make the choice to continue that behavior. Now, there are a lot that are not in their right minds. Let's just be honest. They are having mental health crises. They are off their medications. They're on other medications, illegal medications called, narcotics. And so there's a large group of this population that just knowing that if I don't do what the law enforcement asks me to do is going to land me in jail, it's not going to move them. But part of the society that can make that choice, they're going to move along. They're going to comply with what the law enforcement asks. And as a result, they're not going to be getting hit in the street. They're not going to be asking people for money to fund their drug habit. And if the person says no, they're not going to be assaulting that person. So I think just to say that by passing this, you're going to fill up the jails are already full with these people. It's just on the back end of their crisis, not on the front end of the crisis. Because if you wait and not do anything, which is what we're doing now, those people end up overdosing, they end up getting hit, they end up getting involved in aggravated assaults and getting arrested, they rob, the convenience store. I mean, these people end up in the system anyway. So I think the real choice is, do we want to try to intervene on the front end before it gets really bad? Or do we want to just say, go ahead, keep on doing what you're doing great, and then they end up in jail anyhow? I think that's the difference.
Well, if we are not going to put any money
we already are. We're already funding the system through the mental health department, through CPS, through DHS, through all the monies that we have to spend on local law enforcement. I mean, that is not an accurate reading of what's happening, that we're not going to fund this. We're already funding it.
Not to the degree that it's making a difference. When I look at this issue, it appears to me that, as is the case with Jackson, Eupora's problem becomes Jackson's problem. McGee's problem becomes Jackson's problem.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of small communities that are ill-equipped to handle these issues, and folks who have an unhoused situation. And in particular in the capital city, all these folks are coming to Jackson.
Right.
And so a problem that is in a smaller community becomes Jackson's problem.
100%.
And yet we don't have the resources to really deal with addressing this problem in an effective manner.
I think this could, I'm so glad you raised that point, because that was another part of the testimony, which was that the capital city and other larger cities in the state become dumping grounds for the smaller feeder communities, because since they don't have the wherewithal to address them, they dump them in larger places like Jackson. We even had some testimony where people were coming across state lines from smaller communities, across the border, and being dumped in the capital city. That is a real problem. That is a real issue. And again, you're already dealing with that. So the question is, would you rather give local law enforcement in these smaller feeder communities the ability to try to abate that activity at the source before it gets so bad that they decide, oh, the only thing we can do is go dump them in the UMMC parking lot? Because that's what's happening.
Well, you're speaking of UMMC, they closed their psychiatric ward, and we saw a real uptick in the homeless being on the streets of Jackson with mental health issues.
I don't doubt that.
So have you heard about whether UMC is going to reinstate that ward and that psychiatric unit?
I actually think there is a bill in public health. I try to pay attention in those committee meetings as best I can that remove the CON provisions for increasing the number of psychiatric beds in a number of various hospitals across the state. I hope that UMMC maybe is in on that. If not, maybe that's a vehicle that could address that piece of your problem.
And you've mentioned that you would be open to amendments.
Sure. There's one that just got dropped on my desk.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have a couple of days left to get floor action on general bills.
Yes, sir.
Would you be opposed to holding this matter on a motion to reconsider so that we could consider some possible
Absolutely
other
not.
amendments?
And the First Amendment here from Senator McMahon is a reverse repealer, which obviously will keep this bill still percolating along.
I'm going to vote for that.
All right. And I'd vote for you if I could.
Thank you, Senator Pittman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator
Yes, sir.
Horn. Senator Turner Ford for a question.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, certainly, yes.
You're recognized for a
Thank
question.
you. Thank you. I just want to I have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
And as the discussion was unfolding, I thought about a scripture, and I'm not by any means a Bible scholar, but, the Bible does tell us that the poor we will have with us always. And so I was not aware of these hearings that you all had. My first question is, did you all come from those hearings with written recommendations that perhaps we could review?
Absolutely. And it was in 409, and it was recorded, so I'm not very techie, but I do believe there's a means whereby we can go back and watch the testimony, not me or the questioning necessarily, but the testimony from, I think we had about 11 different presenters, and they were very impressive. I mean, these were people from all over, both from the public sector. We had people representing the city of Hattiesburg who were trying to deal with the homelessness issue there. We had people in law enforcement. We had the mental health component. So we had a wide variety of presenters, and I think we would do well to listen to some of their recommendations. I do.
So during those discussions, was there ever mentioned any type of listing or central repository of homeless shelters that are available throughout the state?
There was testimony about a network of, I think it was like local action agencies that deal in the homeless population across the state. I think there were more in regions, not necessarily just specific to maybe one town or one municipality or the other, but they sort of captured regions around the town. So we heard from the very nice lady from Hattiesburg who was in charge of that region, and she talked about 7 or 8 different regions that the whole state was broken into, and talked about how they try to coordinate amongst each other. But she did say that we needed more help coordinating from the state level, because they were trying to pair, privately raised dollars. A lot of them were church organizations that were raising dollars and doing soup kitchens and closet type places to give clothing. We heard from a gentleman here in Jackson that ran a homeless shelter, and he gave several very poignant examples of how he had been able to take people who were really just lost. I mean, they were just high or in a mental health crisis, and ultimately, through ministering to them, they were able to connect them to family members that had lost contact with their loved one because they'd gotten off their medications, and they were just literally walking the streets of Jackson, and they, got connected, I think, through local law enforcement into the shelter. And, not every story is a success story. Some of those people, the testimony was before they could turn them around, they found them overdosed on the street corner, deceased. So there were testimony from both ends, but to answer your question, yeah, there is a statewide network, but it's a very loose network, and they need more help.
And lastly, I would just say, I just cannot imagine why anyone would want to be homeless,
right?
Especially as cold as it's been, and other issues that we have to deal with. But I do think that there is an opportunity with the opioid settlement money that will be coming to the state, and the advisory committee that is apparently being considered to disperse those funds, that we could look at this issue as well. You've mentioned drug abuse and people having a drug issue, if that's something that we could look at going forward.
100%. And then, the problem is more acute now than it has been in the past because the potency of the drugs, and you're the expert here in the Senate on your drug policy committee, knowing how what used to just get you high and maybe knock you out, now it can kill you. It's just the potency of these drugs with fentanyl and the lacing that goes on now has just like times 1,000 to what it used to be. So a lot of times the people that do find themselves living on the street on substance abuse issues, they don't make it out of that alive. They literally don't. They get a hold of some bad drugs that they don't probably know is laced with whatever, and they don't wake back up. I mean, it's a very sad situation.
I agree. Thank you, Senator Phillips.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Turner Ford. Senator Jordan for a question. Do you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You yield, Senator Philligain?
Oh, I do. I do yield.
Senator
Yes,
Jordan,
sir.
you're recognized for a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mississippi Police Chief.
What has happened is we need to go back and look at item number 108 and put trades back into public schools rather than community college. This is an acquisition of our own creation. We created this problem by taking shop trade, brick masonry, carpentry, painting. All of these should be gotten in high school. Everybody had to take shop when I was in public school, teacher, and they learned a trade there. Now it's moved to the community college where they have to pay to learn that trade. So we're going to have to back up this acquisition that we created by not requiring shop, home economics when we moved it from the high school. So these are the results we're getting now. So we're going to have to back up and go back and learn to put these trades back in high school where they can learn and make more money by learning a trade.
Thank you for that, Senator Jordan. And of course, you're uniquely qualified to point that out, given your history in education in our state over many years. You've done yeoman's work in that field. And yes, the trades nowadays that are available, plumbers, electricians, welders, pipe fitters, these jobs make more than a lot of us in here make.
You bet.
And that's good, because when my plumbing wasn't working a couple of weeks ago, it was a mess in my house, and I was thankful to pay the plumber whatever he charged, and it was quite a bit to get my house working again. So you're exactly right.
So this is a problem we created by removing it from high school, home economics, and shop.
Yes, sir.
And we need to back up and go put it back in there, because the trades that you talked about, they are necessities and they're very expensive. You can make a lot of money at them. And plus, you're dealing with a younger mind, too. And as the drug policy chairman said, fentanyl and all these other chemicals are out there, and they can get a hold of those, and they're crazy as a sack of foods when they get all these different drugs in them.
Thank you. Yeah,
So we're going to have to back up a little. But we're responsible for it by taking it out of high school and putting it in community college, where most people stop at high school level.
Well,
I hope at the time amendments we'll get a chance to put this into focus and get some basic principle back. But this is an acquisition that we created ourselves. Thank you, Maker.
Thank you, Senator
Thank you,
Jordan.
Senator
You're good to
Jordan.
remind us.
Thank you, Senator Jordan. Senator England, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. President. Question?
You yield?
Yes, sir.
You're recognized, Senator England, for a
Thank you,
question.
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I attended the hearing, which was a very long hearing, and I appreciated you and Senator McMahon having that hearing. I seem to remember the Cicero Institute was here, and I know they work nationally with trying to address homelessness, specifically in the area of Los Angeles, I know.
Absolutely.
And am I correct that they actually supported legislation such as this to help combat homelessness?
Absolutely. He came and testified, flew all the way from California and at our invitation. And like you said, he pointed out the problem writ large in California, in LA County specifically, where he had been working for many years. And he applauded the Senate for trying to tackle the problem here in a very proactive way, as opposed to being reactive to only dealing with the problems, but trying to get on the front end of some of that to try to divert people from getting into the really bad parts of these things that we've discussed a little bit. So thank you for reminding us about that.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. And I remember I specifically asked the question in that committee about whether we were being less than compassionate towards some of these individuals, because it does seem like that way. We're trying to end these camps. But I seem to remember, and I'm going to ask you if you remember the same, that he said, homelessness is a symptom we've got, and I think you've already made this point, but I want to make it clear from the committee meeting that we had that this gentleman said, we're not addressing the problem by letting these homeless individuals camp out. We need to get them into facilities where they can be helped.
Yes.
And that is the reason he supported this. Was that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you referred to it as tough love.
That's
you got to, show people that you care, not by coddling them in their addictions, but in trying to get them to where they can get some recovery and some help. So I appreciate the question.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Filligan.
And I would also say for the body, Ms. Robertson reminded me that the Mississippi Police Chiefs Association has in fact come out in support of this legislation. She has the text from them. If you would like to go look at it, she can share it with you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Senator England. Seeing no further questions on the committee sub?
I think we have the amendment by Senator McMahon at the appropriate time.
Okay, we'll need to adopt the committee sub first.
My motion will be to adopt the committee substitute.
All right, you heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. We're on the bill. And First Amendment. Senator Mann, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to say how much I appreciate Chairman Filligan. We're fortunate as a body to have somebody like this carrying this particular piece of legislation. He's a man of faith. He's one of the kindest and gentlest people in this room. We had hearings, and I really admired watching him work. I'm being sincere. Watching him work, we included a lot of different people from across the state. We're seeing homelessness rise throughout the state, so we're trying to make a meager attempt to address it. It's a work in progress. I've got some amendments as well, but I think if we will put a reverse repealer in this, and each of you will go to Senator Filligan, if I can be helpful, but if you will go to him, that he'll address your concerns and your concerns. And maybe amendments will be added in the final version of this, but so I ask that the proposed amendment be read.
Okay.
Amend on line 727 by inserting the following before the period and shall stand repealed on June 30, 2025.
All right, you've heard the amendment. Are there any questions on the amendment? Senator England for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
My inquiry would be, I understand that we are on an amendment, not on the committee sub. Is that correct?
Correct.
What was the vote on the committee sub? Was that a majority vote, or did we have
It was a voice vote.
It was a voice vote?
Correct.
Did we have to have a majority or 3/5? What was that?
It's a majority.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Any further questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, vote aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. On final bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do appreciate the kind words from Senator McMahon. He was instrumental in getting this hearing moving forward and inviting the members, so I thank him publicly for his work on this. And with that, I would move adoption based on the morning roll call.
All right. Motion is move adoption by final morning roll call. Does anyone object? Senator Horn, you have a question, Senator Horn?
Yes, Mr. President, just one more question of the chairman.
I think it's too late. We've already called for the vote. Sorry.
All right.
Senator has suggested use of the morning roll call. Does any senator object to this? Seeing none, does any senator wish to be recorded as voting no? Senator Frazier voting no. Senator Simmons, Derek Simmons voting no. Senator Norwood voting no. Senator Thomas, no. Senator Jordan, no. Senator Brumfield, no. Senator Blackman, no. Senator Jackson, no. All right. Senator Butler, no. Senator Horn, no. Senator Barnett, no. Senator Turner Ford, no. Senator Simmons, no. Anyone else? Senator Blunt, present. Senator Hickman, present. Seeing no one else, please record all others present on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes. Item 96, Senator Fillingane. Pass retained. Senator Horn for question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to hold Senate Bill 2334 on the motion to reconsider.
Okay. Hold that bill in motion to reconsider and join the chairman. Pass on 96. Senator Wiggins. Pass and retain. Senator Simmons. Item 101.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to pass an item and ask that it retains its place on the calendar and go to item 102, call it up and have the title read.
All right, we'll skip item 101, have it retain its place on the calendar, go to item 102, Senate Bill 2021, and have the title read. Mr. Clerk.
Senate Bill 2021, county, shortened notice requirement for special meeting from 5 days to 3 days. I make the usual motion, Mr. President.
The senator makes the usual motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a committee sub, Senators, Senate Bill 2021 amend section 19319 on line 15 to shorten the requirement of the notice for special meetings of the county boards of supervisors from 5 days to 3 days. The committee substitute also adds new language on lines 18 through 21, which require the board of supervisors to post notice of special meetings on the county's official website and or social media page, in addition to the notice requirements already stipulated in the code. It does not remove any current notice requirements. That's the explanation of the committee sub. I yield to any question, Mr. President.
All right, Senator Simmons, thank you. Senator Hill for a question. Do you yield, Senator Simmons?
I yield, Mr. President.
You're recognized, Senator Hill, for a question.
Senator Simmons, did they say why they wanted to shorten it from 5 days to 3 days? Because I think we have an emergency provision that's even shorter than that, don't we?
We do in other parts of the code. We're not actually affecting that. I know if you actually give notice on any public meetings for like an hour, you can go forth with that meeting, but it doesn't change that provision of law. This is only Title 19, which deals with our county boards of supervisors.
Right.
And so they just wanted to shorten it. I know Senator Parks, who sponsored the legislation last year, wanted to reduce it from 5 days to 24 hours. And so the compromise was
I think we'll stick with 3 days.
So the compromise was to actually reduce it in the statute from 5 days to 3.
Because I think, if I remember correctly, we still have an emergency provision where they can meet on real short notice. I can't remember the details, but I think we still have that too. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Hill.
All right, seeing no further questions, your motion?
I move to adopt the committee sub in lieu of the original bill.
All right, motion to adopt the committee sub. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. President, I move final passage by use of the morning roll call.
All right. Senators suggested use of the morning roll call for final passage. Did any senator object? Does any senator wish to be recorded as voting no? Mr. Chisholm voting no. Please record all others present on the morning roll call. Voting aye, the bill passes.
Mr. President, I'd like to go to item 103, call it up and have the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2450, County Law Library authorized use of money for technological purposes.
I make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, Senate Bill 2450 amends Section 19731 to allow boards of supervisors to use the funds for electronic and technological purposes for any chancery or circuit court room in the county. Section 8, which is current law, allows funds to be used for electronic and technological purposes related to the actual public law library. This bill adds a subsection 9, which allows any leftover funds to be used for those purposes for any chancery or circuit court in the county, including but not limited to installing, repairing, and or improving audio systems for listening and technical infrastructure. And so again, just leftover funds, and it's permissive authority, is not actually mandatory authority. And that's an explanation of the bill. Now I yield to any questions, Mr. President.
All right, seeing no questions. Senator, for motion.
I move passage by use of the morning roll call.
Senator suggested use of the morning roll call for final passage. Does any senator object? Anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please record all others on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes.
And Mr. President, I ask for items 104 and 105. I pass those items in Acts and 104 and 105 and ask that they retain their place on the calendar.
All right. Skip items 104 and 105, have them retain their place on the calendar. Senator DeBar, pass and retain items 107 through 111. Senator Delano, pass and retain. Senator Williams, pass and retain. Senator Barnett, pass and retain. Senator DeBar, pass and retain. Senator Boyd, pass and retain. Senator Tate, item 122 on today's calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item number 122, Senate Bill 2444. Ask for it to be called up and the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2444, waive tuition for certain veterans to attend universities or community colleges, establish a program for combat veterans.
I make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Yes, sir. I'd like to, in lieu of the original bill, explain the committee sub.
You're recognized.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is a grant program that we will be creating for combat veterans to be able to take advantage of past their Montgomery GI Bill benefits. Right now, if you are a veteran, then you receive 36 to 48 months of your college education paid for, and you also have 10 years to be able to use that from leaving your service. What we have seen is an increase of post-traumatic stress disorder, that some combat veterans have come back and they're just not in the right state of mind to be in a classroom, and they feel pressured to go ahead and to use these benefits. What this bill will do is this will allow the state to create its own grant program for combat veterans who are Mississippi residents, have been honorably discharged, qualify for in-state tuition, and have exhausted all of their federal benefits, to be able to get a month-by-month basis tuition paid for by each month that they've served in a combat zone. Each veteran would have to be at least 10% disabled or more, and that is an explanation of the bill, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Senator Barnett for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
You're recognized, Senator Barnett, for a question.
Thank you, Senator Tate. I appreciate your concern in regards to veterans, but my question is, so if a service member who did 4 full years in the military and only served maybe 9 months in a war area, does that mean that they're only getting 9 months worth of community college, or do they get the entire time that they served?
It would be the months that they were in the combat zone.
Just the months that they was in the combat zone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does this only apply to just that veteran, or this for, or would you be opposed to extending these services to a veteran who maybe have passed away but has a school-age child that could benefit from these benefits where they could use?
That, we have a separate bill with that, and we're working to try to extend that. So right now, if you're 100% disabled, then you can extend those benefits to your, I want to say beneficiaries, to your dependents. We've had legislation that we brought up this session to try to extend that, and I would prefer that we wait and just work further on that legislation.
Another question, you're saying only for the amount of time that they was actually in a war area, would you consider if the individual has it on their military records where all of their 100% is combat related, would you be okay with giving them some more time? Because undoubtedly this person was wounded while they was there. So I think, and understanding that there is a difference between 100% disabled and 100% disabled.
Well, the legislation that we brought out was to change it to 40%, and that's a lot of funds. If you look over to our neighbors to the east, that note was going to be around $33 million. And so that's, it's something where I'd like to have that conversation, but something that we can't afford to do. This piece of legislation, it's based on an appropriation, so up to $500,000 can go into it just to see, how much it will actually be used. And so I'd hate to put something in here and, we're just not able to afford it.
Okay, is there a reverse repealer on this bill?
No, sir.
Even without a reverse repealer, would you commit to me that if this bill happened to go to conference, that we would talk about this?
We'll talk about it whether it doesn't go to conference. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Seeing no further questions on the committee sub.
I ask for passage by use of the morning roll call.
We need to adopt your committee sub first.
Pass the committee sub. Adopt the committee sub.
Motion is we adopt the committee sub. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. We're on the bill.
Ask for passage by use of the morning roll call.
Okay. The senator suggested use of the morning roll call for final passage. Does any senator object? Seeing none. Does any senator wish to be recorded as voting no? Voting present, DeBar, Barnett. Please record all others present. Morning roll call is voting aye, and the bill passes. Senator Carter, item 123, pass and retain. Senator Johnson, pass and retain. Senator Parker, pass and retain. Senator Johnson, pass and retain. Senator Bryan, pass and retain. Senator Barnett, pass and retain. Senator Delano, pass and retain. Item 135 through 137. Senator Turner Ford, pass, retain. Senator Fillingham, pass and retain. Senator Wiggins, item 145, pass and retain. Senator Robinson, pass and retain. Senator Blackwell, pass and retain. Senator Thompson, pass and retain. Senator Blunt, pass and retain. Senator Polk, pass and retain. Senator Sparks, item 155 on today's calendar.
I'd like to call up number 155 and have the title read, Mr. President.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2285, MDES background check requirements, amend and ensure compliance with certain Internal Revenue Service regulations.
I'd like to be recognized to explain the bill.
You make the usual motion.
I make the usual motion.
All right, the chair makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill comes from the Mississippi Department of Employment Security. We passed a bill similar to this to try to make certain that people that are handling federal tax information, private information, would be subject to the proper background checks and fingerprinting. There was some language that seemed to be of concern to the federal side, And MDES has asked us for this clarifying language to be consistent and in compliance with the IRS background investigation requirements. And that is an explanation of the bill, Mr. President. I would yield to any questions.
All right. Seeing no question for your motion.
I would move for passage on the morning roll call.
Senator suggests use of the morning roll call final passage. Does any senator object? Anyone wish to be recording as voting no? Seeing none, record all others present on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes. Item 156.
Mr. President, would ask that that item be called up and the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2286, Workforce Enhancement Training Fund contributions provide for suspensions under certain circumstances.
Make the usual motion.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill also comes from the Department of Employment Security. It does not change the calculation in any fashion of how we reach the numbers of the unemployment tax that actually funds the WET funds. It just changes the date to which that is calculated to the 3 months ending September 30 for a calendar year, because it was December and we really didn't have a proper amount of time to get that information out to the employers. So all this does is back up the point in time where it is calculated and then given out to our employers. That is an explanation of the bill, and I would yield to any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seeing no questions for a motion.
I would move for passage on the morning roll call.
Senator has suggested use of the morning roll call for final passage. Anyone object to this measure? Seeing none, anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please record all those present on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes.
Mr.
Chairman, item 157.
Mr. President, I would move to pass on 157 through 160 and retain their place on the calendar.
All right. Skip over items 157 through 160, have them retain their place on the calendar. Senator Barnett. Passes. Retain their place on the calendar. Senator DeBar. Pass and retain its place on the calendar. Senator Michelle. Item 163.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item 163, Senate Bill 2413, have the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2413 to strengthen Mississippi Homes Program designating prescribed mitigation requirements.
I'd like to make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to explain the committee substitute, please.
You're recognized.
Thank you. This Strengthen Mississippi Homes program would be our mitigation fund that was formerly known as the Hurricane Mitigation Fund. This legislation has gone through 3 different drafts. It began originally as taking funds from our wind pool. There is no diversion of wind pool funds into this legislation. Our wind pool fund is very sound, with $440 million in assets now, with reinsurance bought every year and flood insurance. The fund is very sound. The only way to get homes out of our special wind pool fund is to improve them so that traditional insurance carriers will therefore insure them. As I mentioned, we've changed the name of the program so that we can cover also tornadoes and wind damage and not just hurricanes. The work will begin in the coastal counties, and other counties will be included as well. It involves a $15,000 per property grant. If the cost of the renovations is more, the owner would be paying the overages amounts. The money will be held in a separate fund, and it will be funded by the following fee. There's a $25 fee that insurance providers pay to do business in Mississippi. That's for the company to pay. And believe it or not, there's several hundred of these insurance companies, and the insurance companies, many of them have several hundred agents. So there's $720,000 of these $25 payments paid by the insurance company. There will be no charge to the agents who are in Mississippi. So the bill proposes to raise that fee from $25 to $50. The insurance commissioner tells me that's right in line with what other states are charging. The original $25 will go into the general fund as it does now. The additional $25 will go into this separate fund, the mitigation fund. We anticipate it will bring in about $18 million a year. We can do at least 1,000 homes a year. We put language in the bill that each year, as the fund exceeds $15 million, the rest of the money will go into the general fund. The retrofit process is really a very simple one. It's hard to believe we're nearing the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Many of those homes down there will be needing new roofs in just a few short years. The retrofit process would be to remove the asphalt shingles, to really affix the decking and to waterproof the decking, to screw down the decking with screws and not nails that would work themselves out. You would also fasten the roof to the rest of the structure, because if a roof is compromised and water gets in the structure, that's where the majority of the problems occur. Also, there's money in this mitigation for strengthening the windows with either shutters or a stronger type window that would deflect the wind. I'll be glad to yield for any questions, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seeing no questions on the committee sub.
I move adoption of committee sub.
Move adoption of the committee sub. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator, we're on final passage.
I move adoption by final passage by use of the morning roll call.
We do have a question. Senator McClendon, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You yield, Senator?
Yes.
All right, Senator McClendon, you're recognized for a question.
Mr. Chairman, the bill is Strengthen Mississippi Homes program. Did we take out commercial?
No.
So it's Mississippi Homes and commercial program?
Yeah. The preference would be given for homes. The commissioner is he thinks each year he would have no problems filling the 1,000 minimum, but if for any reason he didn't, and there was some money in a commercial structure needed funds, then they would be available.
Are we going to limit the number that commercial can take out of it? Or is it strictly going to be?
There's nothing in the legislation to do that.
I was hoping we would do something with take the commercial out. Would you be willing for an amendment of that?
No, I wouldn't. We've had this in insurance committee and it wasn't brought up. It hasn't been a problem. The insurance commissioner's goal is to strengthen Mississippi homes, and that's where he intends to spend the money on it. And I don't see any problem at all. We're looking at 1,000. We think we can exceed that. Maybe we'll come back and this program will be so successful, we'll have another source of funds. You know, we can do much more than 1,000 a year. It'd be wonderful if we woke up in 5 years and we've strengthened 7,000 or 8,000 homes.
I'm all for strengthening homes. I'm just concerned about strengthening the commercial.
Yes. Well, I've got confidence in our insurance commissioner that he wants to help the people on the coast. The best thing about this is he knows that the insurance companies will give reductions in premiums, so it's going to be an immediate improvement to the structure for the individual, and at the same time a reduction in their premium costs. And our goal is to hopefully move them out of the wind pool so that we can start depopulating the wind pool and move them to standard forms of insurance carriers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator England for a question.
Yes, Mr. President.
Do you yield?
Yes.
Senator England, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Michelle. Senator Michelle, I've had a lot of questions on this topic from homeowners in my area and mainly across the coast that have seen their insurance rates increase tremendously. And I know that's all across the state. What I want from you, I guess my question is, will you agree to continue to look at this so that we can make sure that we're able to help as many homeowners as possible, as opposed to maybe the few that may be eligible currently to reinforce and mitigate their homes so that we can maybe start seeing insurance rates come down?
Yes, and I failed to mention that this program was founded by this legislature last year, and it was funded with a front-end amount of $5 million. So in the first year, we could have as much as $23 million.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator England. Seeing no further questions on final passage, Senator.
Move adoption, final passage by the use of the morning roll call, Mr. President.
Senator suggested use of the morning roll call for final passage. Does any senator object? Anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please record all present on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes. Senator Wiggins, item 164.
Go to item 164, call that up, ask the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2489, Appellate Court Expense Allowance, authorized receipt for judicial duties performed in any area of the state.
Make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real simply, the judges, the appellate court judges already have a per diem that's allowed for them doing work in Jackson. What this does is, if you look at lines 43 allows them, while attending judicial duties in Jackson, to have a per diem 20 days per month, and then if they're doing it in any other area of the state, not to exceed 12 days. And at no point does it exceed 20 days. So we cap it at 20 days. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Seeing no questions, Senator, for your motion.
Move passage on the morning roll call.
Senator suggested use of the morning roll call, final passage. Does any senator object? Anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Senator Hill, no. Anyone else? Senator Chisholm, no. Seeing no one else, please record all others present on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes. Senator, item 165.
Call that up, ask the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2479, criminal investigators increase salaries and salary supplements of.
Make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This comes to us from the Prosecutors Association, and it's providing a raise to the investigators in our district attorney's office. Like a lot of what we have heard across the state, they need to compete. The investigators, they're being hired other places, and this is simply raising it to $75,000. And then in Section 2 with a $10,000 supplement. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no question, Senator Hill for a question. Do you have a question? Do you yield, Senator Wiggins?
Yes.
Senator Hill, you're recognized.
I support this bill. I'm just not clear on what funds the supplement comes from. Like, is it state or local? Because it's this district attorney's investigators, right? Says not to exceed $10,000 a year.
Yeah, and there's different funds. I was just looking at the statute. I'm not exactly sure, but they are allowed to supplement them if they so choose. And the district attorneys have their own funds as well that they can do that.
So this is basically they can if they want to, but they don't
Yes.
have to? Okay, thank you.
And if you, line 56, and the salary of a criminal investigator may be supplemented in amount not to exceed $10,000. There's funds from pretrial diversion, funds from forfeiture funds, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no further questions, Senator, for your motion.
Make the usual I don't make the usual motion. Move passage on the morning roll call.
Senator has suggested use of the morning roll call, final passage. Does any senator object? Does any senator wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please record all others on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes.
Pass 166 and 167.
Pass items 166 and 167, have them retain their place on the calendar. Senator Bryan, pass and retain. Senator Boyd, pass and retain. Senator Chasnaw, pass and retain. Senator England, you're at item 174.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item number 174 on the calendar and ask the title to be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2649, election penalty for individuals who assisted electors with ballot but willfully failed to turn in ballot.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. President, I ask to be recognized to explain the committee substitute.
You've got to make the usual motion first.
I do make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee substitute, I will explain. This is a bill that comes to us from our friends at the Attorney General's office that expressed having an issue with this and not having a way to penalize whenever an elector that is assisting or an elector is being assisted by a caregiver or someone that they're allowed to help the voter by law. If they willfully fail to transmit that ballot with the intent of the ballot not being cast, that is now penalized. It's a misdemeanor, punishable by county jail for not more than 1 year, and a fine not more than $1,000. Again, this is something that the Attorney General's office has mentioned that they have had reported to them, but they did not have a penalty in the code, so they've asked for this directly for that reason. I'm happy to answer any questions on the committee sub.
All right. We have a question. Senator Jordan for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Do you yield, Senator?
I sure do, yes.
Yes.
Senator Jordan, you're
Mr.
recognized.
Chairman, yes, how many days are involved before they have to report?
There's no requirement here on days. I'm not sure what the actual statute of limitations would maybe be on that. But I believe once, what has happened is an elector that thought they had their ballot mailed in, maybe they requested a mail-in absentee ballot and had a person, a caregiver or a family member assist them with that, and then later checked and found out that they had not voted. And I think what may be happening is, and again, there's a willful issue here and then an intent requirement as well. What's happened is if somebody doesn't like who they realize the person was voting for, they just don't cast the ballot, and there's no penalty currently for doing that. So that's what we're trying to add into the code.
So we're adding a penalty for it.
That's correct.
How much?
Thank you. How much?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a misdemeanor, which is the reason for the committee sub. We added this to be just a misdemeanor, so you're penalized by jail time in the county jail up to 1 year or up to $1,000 fine.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Seems like a good idea.
Thank you, Senator Jordan. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Senator Jordan. Senator Simmons for a question.
Yes, Mr. President.
You yield?
I do.
You're recognized, Senator, for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator, for yielding. Is lines 9 through 13 of the bill, is all that new law?
I'm sorry, that's current law, 9 through 13. We did, of course, add just the, you'll see the underline he or she, which I think our legal counsel is doing a good job at trying to catch that whenever they find it, whenever it brings up in the law. So that's the only change in that section. There's no other change in that section.
Okay, so the conduct that is actually being penalized under current law is a misdemeanor and a $1,000 fine up to 1 year on lines 12 and 13, right?
That's correct.
And so we add a new law regarding people who assist the elector.
That's correct. So if you, and just to explain it completely, if you have an elderly person that requests a in-person absentee ballot, it's mailed to them, and they have a caregiver or a family member, and so that section 2315-907, we dealt with that last year, and we named specifically who's able to handle and assist with these ballots, and it would be a single ballot at this point in time. But if that person that's a caregiver finds out, who that person voted for and didn't like it, and they just toss the ballot in the garbage can, well, that would be a violation of this section because they willfully did that action with the intent that that vote not count.
And has it occurred in Mississippi?
It has occurred. I don't know that it's not a widespread issue, but it is an issue that's been reported to the Attorney General's office, and they would like to, this gives them the ability to actually charge when they find out that that's happened, as long as they meet their elements.
How many instances been reported to the Attorney General's office?
I'm not sure exactly how many, but I will certainly find that out for you, Senator Simmons.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions.
My motion is that we adopt the committee sub.
Motion is we adopt this committee sub. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The aye has it.
Thank you, Mr. President. If there are no further questions, I move final adoption by use of the morning roll call.
Senator suggested use of the morning roll call for final passage. Does any senator object? Does anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Senator Simmons, no. Senator Norwood, no. Horn, no. Brumfield, no. Jackson, no. Butler, no. Blackman, no. Thomas, no. Anyone else? Please record all others present on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes. Senator England, you want to pass the rest of pass and retain items 175 through 180. Senator Johnson, pass and retain. Senator Delano, pass and retain. Senator Chasnall, pass and retain. Senator Wiggins. We're on item 184.
Go to item 184, call that up, ask the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2452, Child Support. Create presumption that support continues past the age of majority for a disabled child.
Make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you. I will be clear on this. This body has passed this bill 4 times, and it has died in the House, generally speaking, as a result of 1 or 2 members. What this bill is creating the presumption that a disabled child can continue to receive benefits and child support up until or after the age of 21. There in the House, there's been, for whatever reason, a belief that if you pass this, that somebody's going to lose some Medicaid benefits. And so we're either conservative and support families, or we're not. And so Senator Boyd has brought this again. The committee passed it. We are sending it, with passage here in the body, we're sending over there and asking them to take this up. And I will say this, Senator Boyd has had constituents who are in this situation crying because this bill hasn't been passed, and Senator Parker has brought this bill before. To be honest, we scratch our head as to why something like this can't make it through the other chamber. So I'll be happy to take any questions, but it is with God's grace that this will pass the other chamber.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Senator Boyd for a question.
Speak at the appropriate time.
All right. Now's the appropriate time. There are no other questions. You're recognized to speak on the bill.
For what I say today is not as much for this chamber as for the chamber that we've sent this bill down to 4 times. Over 40 states have this in their law, and the others that don't have it in case law, which means that's the way that it's applied. On Friday night at 8:30, I had a phone call from an individual that's not a constituent of mine. She lives in DeSoto County. She was in tears. She has a significantly impaired child who is about to reach 21 years of age. The judge even warned her, I'm not going to have any capacity whatsoever to hold the child's father accountable. And it's a man in this situation. It could be a woman. This is of no consequence of what this is. This woman works 2 jobs, 3 jobs sometimes, to make sure that this child is cared for. And she knows that when something happens to her, she's trying to save money to make sure that that child can be taken care of long after she's gone. She knows that the situation that she's in right now, that father, and the judge has even warned her, called her up at the bench and said, you need to make sure that that law that they've passed multiple times gets taken care of. We've had our chancellors, when we've had task forces, recommend that this law be changed. Everybody is saying this over and over again. And this body, we vote for it. And it dies down there. So I'm asking you to ask your House colleagues as well. Let's pass this. This is what's good for families. When you have a special needs child, you have them for life. And just because they turn 21 doesn't mean your responsibilities have ended. So let's pass this law. Let's make sure that we take care of these individuals. There is a high divorce rate among parents who have special needs children. And some of you out there have these special needs children. So we know that this is going to disproportionately affect that much more of the population. So I'm asking you to contact your House colleagues. Let's get this bill passed, and let's help these families and make sure that these individuals are taken care of. Thank you.
Senator Jordan, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman.
Do you yield?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Senator Jordan, you recognize.
Thank you very much. Very simple question. It has failed 4 times, and the person in the House position similar to yours. The last time it failed, is it failing, decreasing, or is it increasing, or it's the same thing, about the same?
The specific number, I don't know, but what I understand is they're just afraid that they're going to lose benefits, which, in my opinion, and having handled Medicaid, I don't think is the case. But that's what has, that's the belief that has been taken over there.
Okay. So your counterpart hadn't explained that they will not lose Medicaid because of this.
As far as I know, that's the case. And as Senator Boyd said, 44 other states have this legislation either in statute or their courts have ruled that it's appropriate and it helps the special needs children.
So it's really just communicating with the chairman of the House.
Oh, I've communicated. Oh, we've communicated.
All right.
And it got, at one point, it got to the point on the last day of session, and we've communicated, hence Senator Boyd's speech, passionate speech on this. I will assure you it is not a lack of communicating. It is all, Senator Parker has also communicated. I assure you it is not a lack of communicating with the chairman.
Yes. Well, maybe it's a little too much communicating. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Norwood for a question. Do you have a question? All right, do you yield, Senator?
I do.
You recognize Senator Norwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Wiggins. Senator Wiggins, friendly question. Just the judge and this would basically make the determination. I see it says may exceed that. So the time limit beyond that would basically be done by the judge in consultation with the council.
Yeah, it said that the court may order that. That's correct. But there is a presumption, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no further questions.
Move passage on the morning roll call, Mr. President.
Senator has suggested use of the morning roll call for final passage. Did anyone object to this measure? Any senator wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please record all others present on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes. Senator?
Go to item 185, call that up, ask the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Youth Court Intake Officers prohibit certain state agency personnel from performing functions of.
Make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This comes to us actually from DHS. We had the youth court report that came out, and what we heard was that there are employees that are not CPS workers, but they are DHS workers that are serving as intake officers. Intake is a very big division within the youth courts, and they were not authorized to do that. DHS, on its own accord, sent out notice to all the counties stating that their employees would not be used for intake purposes. This is part of what we're trying to do to address some of the things that we're seeing in our youth courts, and it's straightforward language that says no state employee other than an employee of the AOC may be an intake officer and complete those functions. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, seeing no questions, I believe, Senator, we're on the committee sub.
Move adoption of the committee substitute.
Senator moves adoption of the committee sub. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Move passage on the morning roll call, Mr. President.
Senator has suggested use of the morning roll call, final passage. Does anyone object? Does anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please record all others on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes.
Ask that we skip items 186, 187, go to 188. call that up, ask the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2483, Youth Court Records Authorized Disclosure to Commission on Judicial Performance.
Make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you. Simple bill comes to us from the Judicial Performance Commission and simply amends the Records Act within the Youth Court Act that allows the Commission on Judicial Performance in its official duties to have access to youth court records. This is so, obviously, it brings accountability. They have not been able to have that access, and we're trying to address that with this bill. Be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Hill for a question.
Question.
Do you yield?
Yes.
You're recognized.
So many things go through here, it's hard to remember all of them, but on this section, does a parent still have to have an attorney to get access to their child's youth court records? Because I
Short
think we
answer
put
is
something in there
yes,
that
we
said.
did, and we
'cause-
have amended that, and we had discussion in committee
Yeah.
about different ones, and we even Senator Turner Ford made an amendment that's in here in committee that she expressed a situation where even though she's representing a youth in youth court, she was told she had to file something and get an order, whereas in every other court, as an attorney, you have automatic access to your client's records.
So
And
did we fix that in here?
Yes, we fixed that.
Okay, so the attorney can have access still, but a parent still has to get an attorney before they can get their
No,
child's records?
line 79, the parent of the child who's the subject shall have the right to inspect on that.
Okay, I thought I
And
couldn't
then-
remember for
and
sure
then
if we
line-
had fixed that in the past.
Right, and then line 87, the attorney for the parent shall be provided a copy of any record, report, or investigation.
Okay, I remember that's something Senator Tyndall and I worked on a long time ago.
But Senator Hill, you're bringing up an issue, and I'm glad you raised this, is this has been a very problematic statute in our state. Okay, I actually filed a separate bill to address it, and it is not consistent throughout the state. Different youth court judges apply, and it gets used against either the district attorney's office or in other situations. And we're trying to fix this. And the reasons that you brought up and the reasons the judicial performance is here is so that we can bring some accountability to our youth court system. And as the report said, we need to be better at that. And so, but all this bill is doing is allowing for judicial performance.
Well, at least I don't get as many complaints as I used to about some of these. And things have gotten better, I have to say that, but always room for improvement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Senator Sparks, do you have a question?
A question, Mr. President.
Do you yield?
Yes.
You're recognized, Senator Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your bill. I believe that's something that definitely should happen. Judicial performance should be addressing judges. My question is, who is on judicial performance? And then if the off chance someone on judicial performance is also a youth court judge, I'm assuming there's a recusal, but I don't know the composition of judicial performance.
I
just to
don't
be honest.
either.
Okay.
I don't either. And as you know, judicial performance, they don't oversee just youth courts. It's all the other judges too. So however that works, but I don't know.
Okay. I
don't know the makeup.
That's the only concern. We're obviously overseeing judges, but if the judicial performance group is made up of judges and one of them so happens to be before it, I'm assuming there's a recusal process.
I would hope that would be the case.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no further questions, we're on the committee sub.
Move adoption of the committee substitute, Mr. President.
Senator moves for adoption. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Move passage on the morning roll call, Mr. President.
Senator has suggested use of the morning roll call for final passage. Does anyone object? Does anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please record all others voting on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes.
Go to item 189, call that up, ask the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2771, Youth Court Revised Timeline for Permanency Hearings.
Make the usual motion.
Chairman makes a usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is really a technical fix. Last year, actually, I think it was 2 years ago, we did a lot of changes to allow our permanency hearings in youth court to move faster. That has been working, but what we heard was the timeframes that we had put in there were not working, and so on lines 38 and 39, it says the youth court shall conduct a permanency hearing within 3 months after the earlier of the following and every 3 months thereafter. In some of the places, the timelines were, I guess, too close together and they weren't able to meet them, and so we're trying to allow that to happen. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no questions, we're on the committee sub.
Move adoption of the committee substitute, Mr. President.
Senator moves for adoption of the committee sub. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Move passage on the morning roll call.
Senator has suggested use of the morning roll call for final passage. Does anyone object to this? Anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, record all others on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes.
Mr. President, I ask that items 191 to 194 retain their place on the calendar.
Items 190 through 194 retain their place on the calendar. Senator Bryan, item 195.
I ask that we pass items 195, 196, let them retain their places on the calendar, and then go to item 197 and ask that the title be read.
All right, 195 pass and retain their place on the calendar. Mr. Clerk, please read item 197.
Senate Bill 2681, CON law, delete prohibition on restricted Medicaid program participation for certified facilities.
I make the usual motion.
Chairman makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to explain the bill.
I move adoption of the committee substitute.
You're recognized to explain it.
I had hoped to introduce a bill, and I did introduce a bill, to simply remove the restriction on participating in the Medicaid program for a number of facilities. In trying to get the details of that, it was more complicated than I thought, although we're still working on it. So the committee substitute is a more narrowly drawn bill, which simply specifically does away with the prohibition on participating in Medicaid for a specific facility in DeSoto County, facility in Madison County, and it allows for a certificate of need, for the same prohibition against a hospital in Harrison County. It would also allow additional beds for Sun Valley in Madison County. That's what the committee sub does. If there are no questions, move adoption of the committee sub and suggest use of the morning roll call.
All right, Senator Hill for a question.
Yes.
I do have a question.
Do you yield?
Yes.
You're recognized, Senator Hill.
So instead of these folks going through the process of getting a certificate from the health department, the legislature is just going to tell the health department that they have to issue a certificate for these two locations, correct?
No.
Well, that's what the short title says. Additional beds in a community living program in Madison County.
Can I?
Sure.
Okay. A number of years ago, it was thought to be useful to prohibit certain facilities from participating in the Medicaid program. It was thought that that would save money for the Medicaid program. To the extent that ever was a good idea, I don't think it's a good idea anymore. It's my intention, as this bill works its way through the process, to remove all those restrictions about participating in Medicaid. unless there's some compelling reason not to.
I'm talking about the beds. I'm not talking about Medicaid. I'm talking about.
May I please answer the question?
Sure.
Okay. And so what the bill does is, with certain facilities that we know particularly about, we are repealing the prohibition against Medicaid. But in order not to inadvertently do the exact thing you're concerned about, in other words, by removing language to somehow inadvertently grant a certificate of need, I want to make sure we do not do that. And so that's why the committee sub is written the way it is. The one other provision in the committee sub is to grant 20 beds to Sun Valley in Madison County, which lets them avoid the moratorium.
Well, I appreciate your explanation, and I don't really see why they have to have permission to get any extra beds anywhere, honestly, if they need them. I'm just curious as to why we're providing legislation for these two entities when all the other entities in the state still have to go to the health department to get their certificate of need to change anything. That's my question.
I'm just stumbling over your reference to two entities because the only entity that we're talking about is Sun Valley, which I think there's just unanimous support for.
Well, are we on 2681?
Yes.
Yes.
It also mentions the long-term care hospital in Harrison County as a crossover provider and beds for community living in Madison. So
that effectively does the same thing, but if you want to look at it that way, fine.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just wondering why that, we're just doing it for certain entities and not.
What the bill does is it revises the conditions for the certificate of need in Harrison County, and the condition that we're revising is the prohibition that it the prohibition against its participating in Medicaid.
Okay, so currently, long-term care hospitals can't participate in Medicaid?
No, I'll try one more time. A number of years ago, when it was a common practice for the legislature to authorize specific certificates of need for institutions here, yonder, and there, some of those institutions had a prohibition against participating in the Medicaid program. If those prohibitions ever made any sense, I just don't think they do anymore. And simply what I was trying to do with this bill was remove the prohibition against participating in Medicaid. Because the way the statute is drafted, potentially we could be authorizing certificates of need because we'd be authorizing a facility which doesn't exist right now. And just time ran out working to try to find out exactly if that was going to occur. So it seemed to me the simplest thing to do was just deal with these three specific facilities that we knew specifically what we were doing, and hope to do the same thing for the other facilities as it goes through the process. That's the case with everybody except Sun Valley, and it's 20 additional beds for Sun Valley.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Seeing no further questions.
I suggest use of the morning roll call.
We got to adopt the committee sub first.
I move we adopt the committee sub.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're on final passage.
I go to item 198 and ask if the title be read.
We need to
All right.
move for final passage.
Oh, I suggest use of the morning roll call.
Senator suggests use of the morning roll call for final passage. Does any senator object? Does anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Senator Hill, present. Senator Chisholm, no. Please record all others present on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes. Senator Bryan?
Now I want to go to item 198 and ask that the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2690, Healthcare Expendable Fund, extend repeal or on.
I make the usual motion.
Chair makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator, you're recognized.
We've now arrived at the bill that I was thinking about when I should have been thinking about asking for adoption of the committee substitute and making the usual motion. What this bill does, however, simply extends the life of the existing healthcare expendable fund to 2029. If there are no questions, I suggest use of the morning roll call.
Seeing no questions, Chairman has makes use of the morning roll call for final passage. Does any senator object? Does anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please record all present on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes. Senator Bryan?
I would like to pass items 199, 200, 201, and go to item 202.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill 2753, MDH, direct to incorporate brain health, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia education into existing public health programs.
I make the usual motion.
Chair makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator, you're recognized.
Mr. President, this is a bill which would direct the Department of Health in partnership with other entities to incorporate its existing public health outreach programs into a coordinate into a specific program, brain health, Alzheimer's, and dementia. If there are no questions, I know of no opposition to the bill. If there are no questions, I suggest use of the morning roll call.
Seeing no questions, Senator has suggested use of the morning roll call, final passage. Does any senator object? Does anyone wish to be recorded as voting no? Seeing none, please record all others on the morning roll call as voting aye, and the bill passes.
Mr. President, I would like to pass the remaining items, and I suppose I should ask that they retain their place on the calendar such
Yes.
as it is.
Please pass those items and they retain their place on the calendar. Senator Blackwell, pass and retain. Seeing no further business today, we will move to announcements. Does any senator have an announcement to make? Senator Barrett for announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. With unanimous consent, I'd like to be added as a co-author for item number 122, Senate Bill 2444.
Okay. Get that. Senator Thomas for announcement.
Mr. President, I would like to be added to Senate Bill number 2681 and 2857 with unanimous consent.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Seymour for announcement.
Mr. President, I would like to be added to line item 122, Senate Bill 2444, as co-author with unanimous consent of the Senate.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Senator Sarita Simmons for announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. With unanimous consent, I would like to be added as a co-author for item number 12, Senate Bill 2850, item number 15, 2857, item number 64, 2698, and item number 184, 2452.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Senator Jordan for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be added, with unanimous consent, to be added to Senate Bill 202 as co-author.
Item 202?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Senator Blackman for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask for unanimous consent to be added as a co-author to item 12, Senate Bill number 2850, and item number 184, Senate Bill 2452.
Thank you. Senator Butler for an announcement.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to be, with unanimous consent, I would like to be added to Senate Bill 15, 285, 57. and Senate Bill 2256, number 58 on the calendar, and Senate Bill 2021, number 102 on the calendar, and Senate Bill 202 on the calendar, 2753.
Thank you, Senator. Senator England for an announcement.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to be added as a co-author on item number 122 on today's calendar to Senate Bill number 2444.
Thank you. Senator Derek Simmons for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to be added as a co-author to item number 197 on today's calendar. And also Senator Blackman, if it's okay, item 197, Senate Bill 2681, and then also just for me on item 103 on today's calendar, Senate Bill 2450.
All right, thank you. Senator Sparks for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. With unanimous consent, I'd like to be added as a co-author to number 164, Senate Bill 2489, and number 122, Senate Bill number 2444, and for an adjourn in memory at the appropriate time.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. When the Senate adjourns today, I would ask that they adjourn in the memory of Kenneth Orrick Jr., better known as my Uncle Sonny, who was a naval combat veteran and had battled cancer for the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We'll do so. Senator Parks.
Senator Younger.
Senator Younger.
I need to adjourn in memory for a gentleman by the name of Josh Stennett from Columbus. He was a young fellow and didn't deserve to go out so young. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Younger. Senator Boyd for announcement.
Ask for unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor of item 122 on today's calendar, Senate Bill 2444.
Thank you. Senator Hickman for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. With unanimous consent, I'd like to be added to the following items on today's calendar. Item number 12, Senate Bill 2850. Item number 122, Senate Bill 2244. Item number 174, Senate Bill 2649. And item 184, Senate Bill 2452.
Thank you, Senator. Senator McCon for announcement.
Mr. President, I would ask for unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor to item number 164, Senate Bill 2489 in today's calendar. Additionally, with item number 122, Senate Bill 2444. And on yesterday's calendar, item number 72, Senate Bill 2260, and item number 124, Senate Bill 2197. And I have an announcement, Mr. President.
Announcement. Go ahead. You're recognized for announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, some of you received a Electric Cooperatives of Mississippi invitation on your desk. They apologize. Please note that it is not Wednesday. It is Monday, February the 10th at 5:30 p.m. They would love to feed you a steak, so be sure and go if you got your invitation.
Okay. Senator McClendon for an announcement.
Yes, sir. By unanimous consent, I'd like to be added as co-author on number 122 on today's calendar, Senate Bill 2444.
Thank you. Senator Norwood for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, unanimous consent, I'd like to be added to item number 197 on today's calendar, which is Senate Bill 2681. And item number 12, I'd like to add unanimous consent for myself and Senator Simmons, Derek Simmons, Senate Bill number 2850.
Thank you. Senator Sarita Simmons, do you have another announcement?
Adjourn in memory.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we adjourn today, may we do so in the memory of Sergeant Major Jeremy C. Sims. He was serving in Korea. So let's please keep his family in our prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no further announcements, Senator Blackwell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate
stand adjourned until 3 p.m. Monday, February 10th.
All right, you heard Senator's motion. We stand adjourned till 3 p.m. on Monday. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.